Bonsoir et bienvenue à Magic Number. Aujourd'hui, nous avons l'épisode numéro 59 avec Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. And that's about all the French I'm going to use throughout this presentation. But I'm extremely, extremely thrilled to have Jean-Emmanuel talk about Cube. If you don't know Jean-Emmanuel, you need to catch up on Magic history. He was second in the World Championship a year ago. Apart from that, made 5 top 8s on the Pro Tour level competition with their different names. He conquered my hometown by winning the GP in Warsaw in 2017. And apart from that, he is also a streamer, plays limited, advocates a lot for playing more limited at the pro level, and is an amazing limited mind, as shown by the fact that he's also an all-time trophy leader in best of 3 cube drafts with some insane numbers. So I would also like to say that this stream is sponsored by MTGA Zone, where you can find articles, unfortunately not from Jean-Emmanuel, but maybe at one day. But you can find some of my mediocre writing, but you will also find very good articles from people like Paulo Vitor da Madarosa or from J2S Josh, who's writing about limited there. So welcome, Jean-Emmanuel.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
It is my absolute pleasure. This is actually my early birthday present and my early Christmas gift to have you on the stream. I thought about it for a really, really long time. And at some stage, I told Corticals that he should invite you to talk about Cube. And then I thought for a second and said, no, I want to do that. And then I've luckily managed to arrange everything. So I'm super stoked to have you here. So to start, I always start with the preamble, but because we have a guest today, I'm not going to go on a 5-minute monologue. I'm just going to say that if you are in doubt, consult the expert. And I'm very much in doubt about Cube. I never played Cube. It's one of the formats I just didn't have time to dedicate to. When I was starting to play Magic in deep 90s, there was no such thing as Cube. You just drafted. And when I came back, it was very developed already, and I never had time to catch up and learn it properly. So because I'm very naive, I'm going to let Jean-Emmanuel do all the heavy lifting in terms of strategy theory, and I'm going to be a student today rather than my usual lecturing style. So that's the preamble done. And okay, so what do you expect to do today?
Well, I know what it's about. Like I know you're going to tell me which cards I evaluate differently when I pick them than when I talk about them. Like see my own biases basically. So I'm pretty curious of like what you will be able to tell me about myself as a drafter, but also maybe we will be able to help people get better win rates for the Arena Open this weekend.
Yeah, that's one of my goals as well. I want to play at least 2 bullets, and I don't want to completely waste them on play total of 6 games or something. Okay, we can start with just showing what type of data I used. We took 2 iterations of Cube. Obviously, all the data from 17 lands support 17 lands. 17 lands are awesome. One was from June, and one was from I think it was end of August, beginning of September. And I have 1,700 picks from one, and 2,250 picks from the other, and 340 games roughly from one, and 320 games roughly from the other. And I have to complain, you're very inconsistent in your win rates, because in the first one you won 75.2% of the games, but in the second one you only won 74.8% of your games, which you must have been pretty disappointed by that.
Yeah, a little bit disappointing. Also, I have never looked at like my win rate for each iteration of the cube. I only have the total, and the total is higher than that. So I must say I'm disappointed in what I've been doing recently.
Just to be specific, I'm looking at the game rate, because getting match win rates for best of 3 is a pain. Okay, so I'm sure that the match win rate is higher than that. I just couldn't be bothered to calculate it, because it's a very much pain to get the data out from the tables that I work on. Okay, so this is games, and that means that you probably well, you probably will have around 80, 82, 83% match win rate, something like that,
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
which is more yours. So that's what we're going to look at, and I want to focus on what you're doing different from other people, and maybe asking you why you do it. I'm not going to confront you with uncomfortable data because I don't feel comfortable in the topic myself to berate someone that wins 83% of their matches. So this is going to be more of a trying to use the data to pick your brain rather than trying to use the data to amicably mock you like I do sometimes in the personal data episodes.
Okay.
So I'm going to focus on several different aspects. We're going to maybe start with the drafting process itself, and then we're going to move on to deck building, how you build it differently between different iterations, and we're going to then look at individual card win rates and try to figure out why some cards work so well and why some cards maybe didn't work as well for you in particular iterations. So first, the problem with the cube data is that cube is a gigantic set. It has 500 cards, and they don't have rarities, which means you won't have any card with a massive sample size in the game. In the June, the card you drafted most was Escape to the Wilds, and it was only 14 times. And that's a slight drawback if you want to make proper data analysis.
Mhm.
But if you look at the list of those most drafted cards, what do you think about them?
So I think Escape to the Wilds, I pick it a lot, mostly because I think other people underrate it. Like this, maybe they see it as a gold card, while I think it's splashable pretty much everywhere. Like if you play green, you can splash Escape to the Wilds, and it's going to be amazing. So I think that's where the difference comes from.
I can confirm that because I did this analysis. I didn't put it in the presentation, but I think that Escape to the Wild you picked quite a lot of times on the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
So
makes
probably
sense.
it was available and
Because it's not something I'm going to first pick in a lot of packs, so I can believe that. Other than that, there are a lot of black 2-drops, which also makes sense because I think in the first iteration, like in June, I liked black quite a lot, and also I like starting my draft with a 2-drop. Like I think curve is a very important thing when you cube because all your cards are going to be powerful. So where you make the difference is by being able to start playing on turn 2 all the time.
yeah, I think that Agonizing Remorse was the card that you played the most games with also.
Okay.
So that's what I found when I was looking at it. I found Agonizing Remorse and Brain Maggot. I found it a slightly peculiar choice, but then I saw that you also played them. So do you think that those discard effects were good in that particular iteration, or are they just generally good in?
I think it's mostly that I like starting my draft with something like that because it's both a 2-drop and a very versatile effect. Like it's going to do something good against pretty much everyone, whether they are playing control, even aggro. Like you lose some tempo, but you can disrupt their curve some of the time. And usually in the arena cubes, what happens is that you have a very wide metagame with decks that are really aggressive on one side of the spectrum and decks that are really controlling and almost play no creatures. So having interactive effects that are good against the whole spectrum is a luxury, and that's why I like these card effects.
Yeah, that's what I discovered yesterday when I was playing. I either lost to Elder Gargaroth or Approach of the Second Sun.
Yeah.
That was my main modes of my defeats, basically. And Kogla, is it something that you just pick again randomly, or because it was there late, or?
No, I really, really like Kogla. I have it in my Legacy Cube. I think it has the power level for that. I think it's just like even for 6 mana, it's just an extremely good card, and it's one of the rare 6+ mana cards that I'm happy picking early in Cube.
And yeah, there's also like the small package of Explore and Incubation Druid, or the 2 mana green kind of ramp things. And in other, we'll see in a second, but in other, there's also other ramp things. Is this something that you are keen on putting in your deck, mana exploration?
For the same reason as I like picking discard spells, I think green like mana dorks are very very good first picks or early picks because they smooth out your curve and they are going to be good whatever your deck is doing in the end. Like if you play green, you will be happy to have accelerants most of the time. I think explore maybe I pick a little too high because not all green decks are going to want it. It depends on, like, if you're aggressive, you don't want to play that. You'd rather have a creature in that slot. But Incubation Druid I like because even in the green white counters deck, you can do something pretty powerful with it. So like it's not an aggressive creature, but in the most aggressive green decks, it's still going to do something good because you have counters, synergies.
I'm being attacked by a cat. How can I work in those conditions? I let the dog out, and then the cat came. Okay, let's look at the August cards. We have Hangerback Walker as your top card, but we see Forsaken Crossroads again. We didn't talk about it the first time round.
Yeah.
It's just one of the better lands in the cube.
Yeah, it's a land that is good for every deck. In cube, you want mana fixing because you're usually looking to splash some cards, like Escape to the Wilds, for example, and Forsaken Crossroads and Fabled Passage, that is a little further on the list, are, I think, the two best lands currently in the cube.
There's another land in Den of the Bugbear.
Yeah, so this one is a little specific because I think red aggro was the best archetype or like best color basically in this iteration of the cube. And Den of the Bugbear is something most people don't pick. So I think I got it on the wheel quite a lot, maybe even further than that. And I could have predicted Angerback Walker because that's actually like it's been a running joke on my stream that every time I see Angerback Walker, I have to pick it. And
I mean, because this is only the most picked cards. Soon we're going to see the cards that you picked most aggressively. So the most percent of the time that you see them, you pick them. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see Hangerback Walker there. So your chat is right this time.
Mm-hmm.
But I also see that in this definitely there was a sign of aggro because I see Showdown of the Scouts. I see Rahilda, which is an aggressive creature. I guess there was also the mono-white that you were playing in that format a bit, or at least red-white aggro. Is that possible?
Yeah, I wasn't really playing mono-white. Like I had some mono-red decks, but no mono-white, I think, or very little. But yeah, red and white together, I played quite a bit. Yeah, there's also Yawgmoth, which was the linchpin of the like black-based sacrifice archetype, either with red or just black by itself.
Yeah, I also saw in the data that you really liked playing Yawgmoth for some reasons. I mean, the card is pretty busted, but so you say that Yawgmoth is sort of sacrifice. And Suspicious Stowaway, that must have been probably something that you picked along the way because it was there, I guess.
Yeah, it's Stowaway is a card that can win games by itself some of the time when your opponent is not playing something too aggressive. I'm not as fond of it as the other cards, but like I think it's a card that has a very very high ceiling, and yeah, I guess all these cards make sense. A little bit surprised of Cast Out being that high, but I guess it's unconditional.
It's again, you might have picked them on the wheel frequently as a sort of option. It is possible. Now I regret I didn't put those kind of analytics in there. Lessons for the next time. Okay, here are I call them the most desired cards. And these are the cards that you picked the highest percentage of the time that you saw them. So, for instance, Llanowar Elves, you picked 70% of the time you saw them.
Mm-hmm.
Falky, you picked basically almost every time except for once that you saw it. I think you saw it 11 times. You picked it 10 times. So, what do you think about this list? By the way, just before we go, I would like to stress that Agonizing Remorse, Yawgmoth, Explore, Brain Maggot, Incubation Druid, these cards appeared also on the most picked list. So you picked them not only a lot, but also quite aggressively.
Yeah, this ties in with what I was saying about Mana Dorks, because there's also Lotus Cobra and Paradise Druid in this list.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like Mana Dorks. Like, I think green decks basically can't work without them. Like it's the thing that makes your green deck stick. So if I draft green, I usually start drafting green by picking mana dorks, and not by the other cards, except like something that like Kogla is an outlier because it's so good at what it does. But I'm not going to pick 4 or 5 like green 4 or 5 drops before I have mana dorks to support them. So yeah,
basically pick your Llanowar elves before your Gargaroths.
exactly, because there's no shortage of powerful 4, 5, 6 mana plays in cube. Like all these cards are going to be busted. They're all rares or mythics that were insane in their respective formats. But what's going to make the difference is whether you are able to ramp them out early. And as I was saying earlier, there's both very aggressive decks and very controlling decks in cube, and usually green is stuck somewhere in the middle, and it can have a hard time either defending against aggression because it doesn't have removal, or putting enough pressure to beat the more controlling decks. And so you really need to have this acceleration for your threats to be good enough. So yeah, it's not that I don't dislike green, but I really want mana dorks if I'm going to draft it.
Okay, I also like clearly can see from the data that the first iteration you played more of those ramp green decks. Maybe you played a bit of black more than in the other one. So maybe some sort of Golgari kind of mid-range sacrifice themes from Yawgmoth or something like that.
Yeah,
How
it looks
quickly
like
do you
it.
realize those things, like when you start playing the new iteration of the cube?
It takes some time. Like I have some some priors that I need to check. Like I see the cube list and I look for the most powerful cards, and usually it's going to be things like Embercleave, Yawgmoth. Like these cards are going to tell me which color is the best, like which color I most want to be in. But then like the specifics are harder to figure out. Like is there enough sacrifice stuff, like enough sacrifice fodder for the sacrifice deck to work, enough early drops for red aggressive decks to work. For example, I guess we will talk about it later, but in the very last iteration of the cube, Embercleave is there, but they cut a lot of the red aggressive stuff. So I think it's become harder to draft a functional mono red decks.
I
Than
can
it was
tell you,
before.
I can tell you that I tried yesterday.
Yeah,
No, don't do that.
but
Or
yeah,
at least not
everything.
when you're me.
Yeah,
So one card like Falky, I think that weirdly fits into the theme of agonizing remorse and brain maggot. It's basically, if you play it as a 2-drop, which I assume you frequently will, if you like that kind of style of play, then Falky is basically like your second brain maggot, no?
yeah. I wouldn't have guessed it would be that high, but in a way, it's both a black 2-drop and a ramp payoff that you can play after all your ramp effects. So maybe that's why I pick it that often, even though I'm not that fond of the card. Like I don't think it's particularly powerful or anything, but it fits both roles. So maybe uh, almost all my decks wanted it.
Yeah, and then, we don't have the numbers on how many of those Falkies were picked in pack 3 when you maybe speculated on it and you already had a deck and you might want to pick it for the sideboard, because we didn't mention it, but it's all best of 3. So
Yeah.
there's things that normally I analyze the best of 1 data when the sideboard doesn't enter consideration at all. But this time we talk about best of 3. And Meathook Massacre, how? Because I mean, I can clearly see that you played a lot of very small mana dorks, and then this love of Meathook Massacre somehow maybe clashes with it.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be put in the same decks, but you can still, like, if I'm playing Mana Dorks and Mituk in the same deck, I'm green black, so I probably have a sacrifice team somewhere, and I can probably sack them for value before sweeping the board. But it's funny because I don't think green black sacrifice is a particularly functional deck to draft. Like I don't think you should aim at that, despite what the slide is maybe showing. I think these are two different approaches, and sometimes they merge, but most of the time you're going to be either green ramp or black sacrifice with red or.
Okay, so yeah, this might be completely two
Yeah.
separate archetype that you just overplayed. And now the interesting card in this list is Solemn Simulacrum, because you were very hot on it in June, and I did check it in August. And in August, that was the card that you literally never picked, even though you
Okay.
saw it several times. So that shows you the difference between approach towards the cube when you have aggressive mindset and maybe more mid-range mindset between the iterations. And Price of Fame, any thoughts on that, or just solid removal that very often costs 2 mana?
Yeah, solid removal. Same as cast out. I wouldn't have guessed it to be that high, but I'm not surprised. Like it's a card I'm going to pick. Like all the unconditional removal spells, I'm going to be picking pretty early because they don't force me to play their color. Like you can even splash it. So it's basically a card I'm going to play no matter what, and it's going to be answering some of the best cards in the opposing deck.
Okay, I think we can look at the same graph, but for the August iteration. Hey, Hangerback Walker. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
But we see a complete different picture. I mean, look at it. Hangerback Walker. We have Sky Sovereign. We have Restoration Angel, Rahilda, Glorybringer, obviously Yawgmoth, Chandra, Lae'zel, Cast Out, Sigardian Evangel, Fable Passage, Esper Sentinel, Showdown of the Skulls, and Rekindling Phoenix. Now, this is like all stars of white-red aggressive decks.
Yeah. And you
basically,
can, you can see from this picture that these colors and this style of deck was very pushed in this iteration of the cube, because like cards like Sky Sovereign, Glorybringer, like we are talking some of the all-time best limited cards in their formats, and so
yeah, I probably wouldn't want to play with someone who plays Lae'zel into Glorybringer. Can be problematic. And so Esper Sentinel, is that just the one drop of choice for white aggressive decks?
I guess so. I think maybe it has to do with the fact that you could play it in green white as well, like green white counters. I don't know if it's something I really played in this iteration, but it's Esper Sentinel becomes very good if you can pump it in any way. I wouldn't think there would be so many 4 and 5 drops, because usually I like to start with the 2 drops, but the 2 drops tend to be less insanely good than the 4 and 5 drops, so maybe it evens out that way.
Yeah, maybe you have like a solid spread of them as well, because there's more of them possibly.
Yeah.
Or in that iteration, and then you just don't have to prioritize them as high because they are interchangeable, I guess. While you cannot really replace Glorybringer in your red aggressive deck.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are some 5 drops you can't replace, even though there are a lot of them in total.
So the boat is in the current iteration. So what are your thoughts about this card?
Oh, I'm going to be first picking it like almost every time I see it. Maybe not over Embercleave or Yawgmoth or like I guess
Hangerback Walker.
no, I will pick it over Angerback Walker. Angerback Walker, I think I picked it on the wheel most of the time. I don't know, because it's also like this stat is how often I pick the card relative to how often I see it, right? So
yeah, but I only took it. So I normalized it. So it doesn't count when you don't pick it when it wheels. So it's sort of like tilts it for picking cards on the wheel a bit, because I only counted how many boosters you saw it and how many times you picked it.
Okay, because like all like the 5 or 6 following cards in this list, I'm picking over Angerback Walker. Like I think it even goes further than that. Things like Chandra or Sigardian Evangel, I think I'm going to pick.
That's very likely, because maybe people are not high on it, and it's like a very good card to wheel, I guess, and will fit every deck. So
yeah, but Hangerback, yeah, it's a very good card. Like it's both. It's a card that you can play in any deck. It's a very good defensive card. It's a fine aggressive card, even though it doesn't put on a lot of damage in the early game. It's a resilient threat that is annoying to remove. And then you can combine it with counters synergies or sacrifice synergies, so it bridges these 2 archetypes. So I think that's why I like it that much compared to most people.
yeah, I think that the rest makes perfect sense. It's just very solid on raid cards. Rekindling Phoenix is a super annoying card to play when you're against a red deck and you don't have an exile-based removal of some sort. So I think that here Sigarian Evangel, maybe. We didn't talk about that card yet.
Yeah, probably the best white 2-drop, maybe after Luminarch Aspirant. I don't recall if there was Aspirant in this
It
version of the
was.
cube
You
too.
played a
Yeah,
lot of it.
okay. But yeah, maybe Evangel is a little bit slept on compared to Aspirant because it didn't have the same success in Constructed. But yeah, it's a very good 2-drop because it scales like somewhat like Anger Backwalker. It's a card that you can invest more mana in later in the game.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Okay, let's move on to the next thing, and it's never picks. So these are the cards that you never pick, and I have 2 graphs for each of them for each of the seasons, so we don't have to go super over the top for that.
Okay.
I can tell you that Clifftop Retreat, you never picked it in the June, but you picked it quite a lot in the August version. And that also tells you something about, we can talk about Cube a lot, but 2 different iterations are completely different philosophy. One card I wanted to ask you was Courier's Briefcase, because since you like those 2 mana accelerants, you somehow don't like the Courier's Briefcase. And I was wondering why.
No, it feels very underpowered to me compared to the other ones. Like I want my mana dog to not only ramp me into a 4 or 5 drop once, but to also keep producing mana for whatever other big things I might have in hand or any mana sinks later on. And I think I'm not going to be sacrificing the briefcase very often for 3 cards. But maybe I'm undervaluing it a little, given it's somewhat similar to other cards I pick very highly.
Yeah, but it's true that you, I think, had only 1 5-color X in the whole format there.
Yeah,
which means that getting to 5-color mana is. I also, this is another data that I analyzed, and obviously then I thought, whatever. But I looked at your pick rates of different types of cards, and you don't, in either of the iterations, you didn't pick lands very highly.
No.
Because first thing you learn about Cube when you listen to any kind of content about Cube is, lands are very important. Pick lands highly, get fixing, because then you get good cards later. But you seem to not be following that strategy.
Yeah, so I have quite a big disagreement there with most of the best cube drafters. At least most of the cube drafters I know. I pick the universal lands very high, so Fabled Passage, Forsaken Crossroads, or in more powerful cubes like Prismatic Vista is one of my favorites first picks in Legacy Cube. But as for the lands that only produce 2 colors, I view them as goals in a way, so cards that ask you to play their 2 colors for them to do anything, and they are good gold cards because there is a limited supply of them. You're not sure to get them in the end, and you will need them if you're in these colors. But they are still gold cards, and so I will be picking the most powerful monocolored cards in each color over the lands. So as a result, they fall down a little on my pick order. I don't want to have the experience of picking lands and then ending up in a deck that doesn't play one of the 2 colors because they're just wasted picks when I could be picking most of the cards of the spells I pick the highest. Cards like Glorybringer or Embercleave or whatever are going to put me very strongly in that color, so I'm going to play them a lot of the time. And then there are the cards that I can splash that I will be playing all the time. So compared to that, the lands are little less likely to end up in my deck, so I prioritize them less highly.
Okay, this list is there's a bit of a trap in this look, because the fact that you've seen the cards many times and you never pick them, it means that also the community lets them pass quite a lot. Because in Cube, the more you see the card, the less it's valued by the general community. That's why the second graph, I picked cards that you saw the least and still you never picked them. Because this means that there is a disagreement between the community and you in terms of those particular cards. And we have, that's the list. And I can tell you hate Teleportation Circle. You physically must hate that card. And I want to know why. I mean, I love it, Not because it's good, but I love it because it does fun things that people want to do. That's my commander player. He loves teleportation circle.
Yeah, I like doing fun things too, but when I'm cubing, like I know a lot of people, even good players, are cubing as the way to to I don't know, to feel good, to try new things, to relieve some of the pressure of other formats. When I cube, I'm cubing to win, so I try to not let that affect me too much. And I don't hate teleportation circle, like it's a fine blink enabler, but it's the sort of card that you will only want in a very particular archetype, like not even color combination, but archetype. You need to be blue white and blue white blink specifically, and then it won't make the cut all the time, even in that archetype. So yeah, I guess I don't pick it that highly.
Vanishing Verse was a bit of a surprise, but that probably is because you'd never played Black White, I guess.
Yeah, and also like maybe also my general disgust of gold cards early on.
Yeah, that's yeah, because it doesn't go late. So and Elish Norn,
Elish Norn, I think, is a little overrated by people because when you play it, it tends to do very powerful things, but also it's not good in all matchups. Like it's going to wreck the most aggressive decks, but against the most aggressive decks, you don't always reach 7 mana. So it's the sort of
that's the
thing
problem.
where the card is in your hand and you feel like you win the game if you cast it, but sometimes you don't even cast it in the game. And against controlling decks with removal spells and counter spells, it's actually very bad. Um,
Mm. And what about Mana from Hellkite? Just not enough power in it, or is because you hate multicolor cards on top of everything, and it's better with multicolor cards in your deck.
Maybe. I think Mana from Hellkite is fine, but suffers from the presence of better 4 and 5 mana spells. Um, like since there are cards like Chandra and stuff like that in the cubes, these other four and 5 drops tend to not make the cut, unfortunately.
Okay. And that's important. I think that what you say that you, if you know that the card will unlikely make the cut, you don't even bother picking it,
Mm.
rather than risking playing a substandard deck that might drop your win rate below 80%, even God forbid. So these are the August non-pickers, and these are the most common ones. So these are the cards that other people are not also picking. I
Okay.
think that in this particular, obviously, teleportation circle is there. But two cards that surprised me were Shelter and Ogrehead Helm. I thought that with you playing white red aggro a lot, you would be maybe at least sometimes interested in those cards.
So the Helm has been a big disappointment for me. I thought it was a pretty good card when it was revealed, and I tried it in my own cube for a while, and I realized that most of the time when you equip it and then connect, you don't want to discard your hand and draw new cards because you invested mana in the equipment. So this mana you didn't invest it in playing out the spells in your hands. So there's tension in the card. Also you're giving up the creature. Like I think you need to sacrifice the equipped creature.
I think
Um,
so. Yeah.
so yeah, the investment wasn't worth the reward most of the time. Maybe I'm underrating it as a result now. Like maybe I've been too disappointed in it, and I just don't want to pick it anymore when sometimes I should. And shelter, shelter, I always feel a little guilty when I don't pick it very late because it's like it's a fine card. It's going to have very good uses sometimes, but I just never seem to have the space in my white decks for it. Like most of the time, my non-creature slots are filled with removal spells or stuff that pumps creatures. And the problem with Shelter is you don't know if it's going to be good in a certain matchup, so you don't really want to main deck it over these cards. But maybe I should pick it a little more as a sideboard card.
Wasn't there the Zendikar Rising version of Shelter that was on the land? The dual faced something?
Yes,
Wasn't there a card? So
Sajiri
would that be a
yeah,
better inclusion in the cube then you might be tempted because you can put it and
yeah. I think
without damaging your spell density.
I think so. And same for like things like Sajiri Shelter and the Kabira Takedown, like the land spell cards that do very conditional stuff, I'm a big fan of, and usually I'm going to play them in my deck.
I think that the Mirror Horn Mimic is one of the cards that features somewhere in the data here. Actually, because I was pretty aggressively against playing too many two-sided cards in Zendika Rising, because the data was clearly showing that people play them too much and they play them maybe not in the right way, and it cost people win rates. Basically, I showed it with the data. But what I tend to do with those cards, and I do that, for example, with the Bushwhack in Brothers War, is I basically substitute them for a land, and basically I'm building my deck that 50% of the time I will have to play them as a land, because then only I think that they can actually work. Is that something that you will do as well?
Yeah, same thing. Like it's basically half a land in your calculations, and it's usually more a land than a spell, because in limited you tend to play a little too many lands compared to how many you're going to need in a game because of color reasons. Like you don't have as many dual lands as you would want for your mana base to be stable, so you play a little more lands. That's why you play 17, which is the equivalent of something like 25 to 26. When in constructed, you would play less in decks.
Would you nowadays? I think that people play 26 or normally.
Yeah, nowadays it's weird because you have so many cards that use up all your mana in constructed and filter through cards. But for decks with a similar mana curve and a similar amount of mana sinks, you tend to play a little more lands than limited for that reason. And so usually the spell lands and the channel lands and all that stuff you can count as lands, and you're happy to be able to use them as spells later on.
Yeah, that was my sort of epiphany when I was thinking about the Bushwhack, is that basically if you don't play it as a land, then it just becomes a 1 mana fight spell, and 1 mana fight spells were not like really great at limited, so it becomes like a poor card. But if it becomes 50-50, then all of a sudden it's something that I might be interested in, because so many late games when I'm flooding, I draw it and I have a perfect fight spell, but early in the game I can do this for fixing. But anyway, and also let's not ever again mention the C word on this stream. And by the C word, I obviously mean constructed. Okay, let's move on to the ones that you never picked, even though the community treasures them somehow. And that's the picture. We have Solemn Simulacrum, which you were actually picking very highly in the previous iteration, but in this one, you just decided you don't want any of it. And there's a lot of the things that people love playing in Cube in there, because we have Field of the Dead, Oracle of Muldaya, Golos, Titan of Industry, Ugin, Ulamog. So basically every ramp possible card in history, you just basically refuse to pick them.
Yeah, the first two are very expensive cards that I wouldn't be picking very highly, even if I wanted to play a ramp deck. Like I would focus on the bones of the deck and then get the payoffs later. So if people are picking Ulamog very high, then it makes sense. I wouldn't ever pick it. The things like Golos, Field of the Dead, Oracle of Muldaya, these are actually cards I like in other environments. But I guess in this one I was too focused on drafting aggressive cards for them. I can't hear you anymore. I don't know.
No. And Angel of Invention?
I think Angel of Invention kind of falls in the same category as Mana for Malkite that we talked about earlier. Like it's a decent 5-drop, but it suffers from the competition in the same slots. So usually I don't have space for it.
And is it the same sort of with Ulenwald Oddity? Because that's a 4-mana card, but yeah, it has an activated ability that's pretty expensive.
Yeah, Oddity looks better. Maybe the times when I was drafting green, I didn't especially want aggressive green cards. I don't really know about Oddity. I don't have anything smart to say about it.
Okay, and Golos and Field of the Dead, because that's like a combo in its own, and people absolutely love playing it. I know from...
Yeah, I'm not against playing these cards. I think they are pretty good, but I think it's a case of a delta between how good I think they are and how good the community thinks they are. I think people have been maybe traumatized by sorry, I'm going to use the C word.
Oh no!
Okay, I'm not going to use it,
Okay,
but
no, no,
you know,
I get it. I get it.
you
It
know
was
what I
banned
mean.
for a reason in the
Yeah.
C format. Yeah.
But there are good cards, but they don't automatically win the game in limited. Like Field of the Dead, for example, is a card that you might think it gives you a huge advantage in very long games, but in Cube, it's not necessarily something that will overpower what your opponent is doing, because people do very powerful things. Like something like Scarab God can beat Field of the Dead, Elesh Norn, things like that.
Okay, so it's because it lacks the inevitability that it has in other formats, or it had in other formats. And I'm assuming that there will be cubes where Field of the Dead is absolutely the right thing to do, because there
Yeah,
won't be, for example, the aggro menace. I guess.
the ideal thing you want to do with Field of the Dead is have a lot of answers in your deck, and very wide answers like Thoughtseize and Assassin's Trophy, things that are sure to deal with the problems you face. And then once there are no problems on the opposite side, you can just win with Field of the Dead. And since there are very few answers to Field of the Dead, this strategy is very effective. But if people are playing a lot of different threats and you don't have the universal answers, Field of the Dead will get overpowered some of the time.
Isn't it better than just to play the Approach of the Second Sun if you want to play a deck like that, because it's sort of more inevitable?
Yeah, for example.
Yeah, so I guess it's the sort of like deck, like the Clear the Mind kind of build around in Ravnica Allegiance, when, because the games will go longer, you need to be prepared for every possible answer,
Mm-hmm.
because you will see every possible answer. And if you are not ready even for one, then you might lose the game because of that, because of the power level of individual cards in the format also.
Yeah,
Right.
but I think like the fact I don't pick these cards very highly mostly has to do with my love, or maybe not love, but my preference for red and white aggressive decks in this iteration of the cube.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, can you imagine? Did you ever play like Field of the Dead decks in Cube and
Yeah,
Arena Cube?
I did, and I also play it in my legacy cube. So it's something I'm happy to do if the like if the color if green is open, and if I have enough answers across the splash colors.
I mean, all this talk is, I'm really excited to get your takes on the current cube later, because
Yeah.
I think that one thing we learned so far from you is that even though those cubes are quite similar, I think they are probably like 60-70% cards are the same in those two iterations. You still have massive differences in how you approach them, and I'm pretty sure that the current iteration is slightly different from either of the two of the one that we described. So let's look further. Okay, this also sort of shows how you approach the formats very differently. I just decided not to look at the color combinations that you played the most, because the sample sizes are just too small there. So I wanted to get like a big overview picture, uh, mainly because it's quite apparent of what is different between those two iterations in there. And I looked at how many 2-color decks, 2 colors and splash, 3-color, 3 colors and splash, and 4 colors and splash decks you played. And actually, most decks, like 55%, were in 2-color or 2-color and splash, but also quite a lot of them were 3 colors or 3 colors and splash. Obviously, what is a 3-color deck is defined by 17 lands, so it will have over 3 spells of each color.
Okay.
And if it's below 3 cards, it will be counting as a splash. So some dirty multicolor stuff, still quite a lot of 2 colors.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense to how you remember the?
Yeah, I was a little surprised about the number of 3-color decks, but when you defined what it means in terms of like what's 17 lands counts as a 3-color deck, it makes more sense. Because I think among the 3-color decks, I had I had at least some decks that had 3 to 4 splash cards of something like 5 sources, including mana dorks. So they are counted as 3-color, even if I myself view them as 2-color decks.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the problem with data, is determining the boundaries of certain topic. Like, especially when we have arbitrary definitions of what is what, it's really hard to convert that to data. So I know that 17 lands, we discussed quite a lot how to count it, and It's always a problem because someone can argue, why not 4, why not 5, and then it all becomes a. As a biologist, I hate taxonomists because they decide what is a species, and discussion in what is a species in bacteria is probably books written about it, and literally I don't care. It's a bug. Yeah, I studied them. I don't mind the differences of two letters in the DNA code of particular gene determines whether this is a species or not. So that's my run. Thank you very much. Let's look at the other iteration, and you'll see like very big difference.
Yeah, so no 3-color decks and some monocolor decks appear. Yeah,
it's actually only 2.5% of the games you played with monocolors, but 10% of the games were monocolors with the slight splash, which I assume were mono red decks with the showdown or something like that.
Mostly, I think, yeah, Showdown was the card that I splashed the most in mono red. I think there is very little value to stick to strictly one color and no cards of the second color, because the first 3 to 4 lands you play of your other color are not going to impact that much your opening hands. Like you will very rarely get opening hands with no land of the first color if you have 13, 14 sources of it. And then it can help you play cards that are much more powerful than the last ones of the first color. Like if your mono red decks has to play a bad burn spell, something like Unholy Heat without Delirium or something like that, you'd rather play Showdown of the Skulls in that slot.
Yeah, out of complete anecdotal data, in Kamigawa I played like this mono black deck, but I splashed some white because I had the black whatever the 5 mana spell that cost 4 black, and obviously I opened an opening hand with all 4 of my planes and 0 swamps at some stage. And I still managed to win that game by casting the inscription. So another inscription, what is the thing, the 5 mana thing?
Invoke Despair?
Yeah, Invoke Despair. I still managed to cast it in that game somehow.
Okay.
But it was a bit of a frustrating opener. And obviously I never mulligan in best of 1. And we are going to have a discussion about mulligans with you later. So get ready for that one. Okay. But yeah, I mean, these two cannot be more different from each other. And these are very similar cubes. And at some stage, I was even having this thought that, maybe Jean-Emmanuel is just having his moods, and then in June he was feeling more optimistic and wanted to play colorful decks and splash a lot.
In all honesty, there might be some truth to that, because when you start, when you find a recipe that works for you in a cube and you mostly care about your win rate, there is a big temptation to stick to what works and maybe stop exploring as much and even be blind sometimes to signals that are outside the scope of what you win with. So I think like once I find a recipe that works very well for me, as was the case in this cube, in the August cube, I have some blinders to other stuff, even in drafts where I could have drafted them.
It's funny because that links very well to one of my pet unprovable hypotheses that in last several sets Simic was pretty bad. And I think that part of it is because people just don't feel like exploring Simic because the games take longer and they rather play something faster in best of 1. So because of that, they under explore the solution space in Simic decks, and they have poor win rates because no one wants to play them.
One thing I noticed that is somewhat related to that idea is that when you have tournaments in Limited with a sealed portion and a draft portion, people very often try to draft the color combinations they won with in sealed. Like there is a very big correlation between the two.
It would be amazing to get this. Maybe we could get that data from Arena Opens. Maybe, when you have the first day sealed and the second day draft, and we can see if people do that more frequently. I'll have to ask the guys at 17 Lens if we can get that kind of data. But okay, that's actually a fun idea. But I heard it before with the sealed, and then you draft. You basically try to redraft your sealed because you went 7-0 with it because you're in day 2. So you felt that it worked. Okay, we go to the actual individual card win rates, and I have 2 different win rates. Just in case you don't know, games played win rate shows the win rate of the card when it was in the deck. I will also have the win rates of game in hand, which is the win rate of when you drew that card in the game. So basically, the games played win rate tells you more about the strength of the decks that you played the card in, and signal of the actual card's power is slightly lower because you will draft the card in roughly 40-50% of the games that you play with it in a deck on average. So yeah, 50% of those games that you won with Cavalier of Thorns, you didn't draw it most likely. And game in hand has a stronger card signal because all the games at least feature that card in your hand. We don't know if you cast it. We don't know if it changed the game, but at least you are more certain that there is some signal of the individual card's power. It's higher. This is the best we can get from the win rates. It would be amazing to be able to evaluate the card in complete isolation, but there's always noise in this data. So these are the cards that had the highest win rates. I cut the axis because I couldn't watch them from zero. It was just too high.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I can't really make sense of it. It's a motley crew of cards.
It is.
I guess Steam Vents I can understand because usually when I draft blue-red, I think I tend to have very good versions of it because it's like it means the archetype is very open and I get all the spell stuff. So it makes sense that Steam Vents would be high on the list.
I honestly have to say I don't even know what Obscura Polymorphis does.
It's the Manowar, like it's a Manowar effect, but instead of bouncing back the creature, you exile it, and they conjure a card, a creature card from their deck into their hand.
Okay. So it kills it, but change it to something else.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not surprised that you don't make sense of it because that games played win rate is very frequently like that. It's also you have to keep in mind these are all based on pretty small sample sizes, so there will be a lot of variance in those results. So it doesn't need to make sense really. Like one thing, we know that you played a lot of green in that format, so I guess Cavalier and Renan 7 could be explained by that part. And that you played a lot of black decks, which explain, I guess, Liliana and Junji. But
I don't even really like Junji or Dream Eater or Ziatoa. Like these are cards I'm not a big fan of. I guess I played them in good decks, but I wouldn't have placed them in the list.
So yeah, these cards will be very frequently piggybacking. I mean, I took only the cards that had at least 10 games when you played it in the deck.
Okay.
But that means, there's a really lot of variance in there. I mean, Essica Chariot probably makes sense because you played it more frequently as well, I think, in that data set. These are the cards that you were not winning a lot with when they were in your decks. And again, this tells you more about the decks. But here I found at least a couple of things that I found a bit surprising. I think Cold Steel Heart was a surprise to me.
Yeah, it's possible that I overrate this card a little because it looks like a mana rock, and I'm a big fan of these effects, and I pick them quite highly. Maybe it has to do with the fact that I played it in decks that didn't want it, like decks that were a little too aggressive for it or wanted to put pressure, and it's not a creature, so it can't deal damage in the late game compared to other mana dorks. It enters tapped, so you can't really double spell with it easily. So yeah, I might have played it in decks that didn't want it.
It's also that you have the Celestus on the same list. I mean, slightly different mana rock, and 3 mana is way different from 2 mana, but similar function, I guess, and similar decks will be playing those.
Yeah.
Vorinclex is another thing that surprised me a bit on this list because you had good results with the green decks, and you were playing a lot of ramp, which means that the 6 mana is not really that big a problem, I guess.
So I recall I had a stream where I was really desperate on making Vorinclex plus Planeswalker Ultimates a thing. And so the deck was pretty bad, but I still pushed it and tried to make it work. So that might explain part of the results. I don't know.
Also, Toski. I mean, if you're playing green, do you like playing Toski or?
Depends on the green deck. Like Toski is the kind of card that you will be very happy to play in a green-white counters deck, and very unhappy to play in a ramp deck. Like basically, it's the counterpart to Oracle of Muldaya. You either want one or the other, but never both.
Okay, that's a good tip. Never put both of them in the same deck, and make sure when you have between them, you define the rest of your draft.
Yeah.
And Binding of the Old Gods, again, I mean, this is the sort of card that I would think that you would make it work very well, because we saw how good the Price of Fame was working in your decks. But this is sort of similar.
Yeah, that's surprising for me. I don't have a good answer because I do like the card. Yeah.
Again, we have to keep in mind that maybe the games that you lost is the ones when you didn't draw the Binding of the Gods in your deck that really relied on having the Binding of the Gods. So that's something we have to keep in mind looking at those data. The rest makes sort of sense because aggressive white, it seemed, was not so good in that particular iteration, or white mid-range even. So that explains the Starnheim, a Ganjo, Battle Screech. Again, these type of cards will be good in sort of like mid-range aggro or something like that. Battle Screech, my personal cherished card, because it got me my only Pro Tour qualifying. So
okay.
I still hold it in my heart. So here are the August lists, and here you will see at least some of the more, I think, some of the cards that make more sense. We have Reckless Stormseeker, Methods Enthusiasm, Devil's Play, Light Up the Stage, Riveteer's Requisitioner, I assume is also a red card, is it?
Yeah, it's the 3/1 with Blitz that makes a treasure when it dies.
Yeah, that one. Magda, Legion War Boss. I mean, Croxa sort of fits into some version at least of red. So these are the cards that were winning the most in. So we see that there's at least a lot of the red represented here.
Among these cards, I've been very impressed by Devil's Play lately. I think I had not realized how good it was until recently.
I saw you playing it yesterday or 2 days ago, I think, when I was on your stream. And
in team draft, and I won a couple of games by just double fireballing my opponents.
2022, fireball in the face, still good.
Yeah, when there are two of them, it's a little better.
Yeah. It's actually 2 mana extra is nothing to pay really at that stage of the game most of the time, especially if your red deck is just run out of steam completely. Excuse me. Any other cards in here that maybe you find surprising?
I'm a little surprised by Fading Hope, but I guess it was played in good blue-red decks. In the best blue-red decks, I found space for it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the same thing as with the Steam vents from the previous thing.
And maybe Karn, I wouldn't have expected to do that well, because it's the kind of card that is, I see it as decent everywhere and never really great, but it still has quite a high win rate.
Okay, let's look at the ones that didn't fire in this particular version. I think that the Priest of Fell Rites and Teferi are looking really bad. Judging your 75% game win rate.
That's a big blow for Teferi, which is usually one of the best cards in the deck. It's in, but not in this cube.
And History of Benalia, I was surprised because it seems like this was the cube to play white aggro.
Yes, but it's double white, so it's the kind of card you need a good mana base to be able to play on curve. And I think usually when I was playing white, I was playing white-red. Like I was playing a really two-color deck with both colors equal in terms of amounts of cards. So the double pip 3 drops were a little harder to cast, maybe.
And, another card, I think, Welcoming Vampire. I think that would be exactly what sort of white, maybe white-red aggro wants, because you will be able to drop creatures basically every turn. But
yeah, I think again it's the sort of thing where if I was playing mono white, these cards would have much higher win rates, but because they were mixed with red cards that didn't share the same incentives in terms of colors and deck building in general, they suffered a little from it.
Oh yeah, and Kabira Takedown, we actually talked before about the land cards, and voila, here it is.
Yeah, maybe I'm overrating it then.
And it's always was very tricky because I mean, on one hand, I do believe that these are powerful cards, and especially loading your mana base is good. But on the other hand, the data from Zendikar was not really kind on those double-sided lands, especially played in large
Yeah,
numbers, because they were
it's
just basically at some stage they were spells, but they were sort of like understated a bit compared to what you would get from a full card, and that sometimes hurts them.
mhm.
Um, right here are the we're going to the game in hand win rate. Now
Okay,
this is
nice.
you had the card in your hand,
Yeah,
and this is the first iteration, and Sigardian Evangel with a moderately good 100% win rate. That's usually considered decent.
yeah, you should play this card. It's just great. I don't even know if it's in the cube anymore, but if it is, you should draft it.
But a couple of other cards are quite surprising for me. Like I noticed that you both draft and play quite a lot of counter spells,
Hmm.
and in general, and for the good and for the bad, as we're going to see in a second, probably,
Okay.
if I remember correctly. I'm always scared. Do I remember right the graphs? But in the June iteration, it seems like you had the Kindred Denial. That's a counter spell, if I remember correctly. You have the Sublime Epiphany. There are a couple of other counter spells that were not far off in that list. When do you play counter spells in Cube?
So in the June iteration, I was drafting like mostly slow decks, like either big ramp decks or uh, decks, very interactive decks, like blue-black with a lot of interaction. And in this kind of environment, if I think these decks are the best, I'm going to value counterspells quite high because I need to be able to deal with the threats that are going to come eventually, like the biggest threats from the opponent's deck. And a counterspell is just the cleanest way to deal with any problem you might have in the late game. So if I'm playing a slow deck and I think I'm in a slow format, I will be picking counterspells quite highly, like among the best blue cards.
I mean, I know the data. You will be picking counter spells quite highly, even if the format is not particularly slow. And
Okay.
I see the future. Hullbreaker Horror, is it the same? Like this is the best top end for those blue controlling decks, sort of.
Yeah, it's a card that is hard to interact with. You need an instant speed removal spell that kills any creature on the turn when it's played, and if its controller untaps with it, you can't even kill it anymore. So, like, I think it's the ideal finisher. Like, if you have a perfect control deck, it's going to be your finisher most of the time. And it's even the bad version of horror, the one that isn't uncounterable, but I think it's still pretty good.
Yeah.
Um,
I forgot about that particular skill. Card that I was a bit surprised in their list is Kiora.
yeah, I mean it's a ram spell that doubles as card draw. So when you get both, it's very good. And I think the arena cubes tend to have a lot of 4 power cards because they're trying to make to make this theme work with cards like there was Sarkhan's Unsealing at some point that didn't really work, but they made efforts to push this theme, and Kiora is a good payoff for the theme. So since there are a lot of enablers, it works.
Any other cards? So one thing that I see from this data is, and it can be interpreted in multiple ways, but there is way more blue cards than it would be apparent from how you were drafting. Is it possible that blue was stronger than you anticipated in that iteration of Cube? Or is it maybe that when you went into blue, you really went for the sure deal?
Yeah, I think blue has this thing where the best blue cards are usually not great. Like they are not on the same power level as an Embercleave, a Yawgmoth, or even a Llanowar Elves. So I usually take more time to go. It takes me more time to go into blue. Like I need um, more reassurance that the color is going to be open before I move into it. And so maybe it costs me some blue decks that I would have had if I picked decent blue cards earlier.
um, any other shocking things? The lightning bolt, I assume, is also from the blue red spells decks.
I think so. Yeah.
And probably Into the Royal, same situation roughly.
Yeah. It's funny that Fading Hope was very high in a previous slide, and then we see Into the Royal. So maybe it shows that I'm underrating the bounce spells a little. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
there's
have
also the
expected them.
polymorphist. Now that you told me that's a mana word, and we count it as the part of the bounce, but not as a spell, at least.
Yeah,
For
it's kind of a bounce spell. Yeah, it's a tempo effect. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like it won't trigger the spell synergies. That's I think only the problem. Okay, let's look at the cards that were actually having low rate when you were playing with when you drew them.
Okay. Wow.
And the Great Henge at 45%, that's poor, and that's when you drew it in your Llanowar Elf, Ornithopter of Paradise, Incubation Druid combo decks.
That's quite surprising, actually.
I actually was pretty surprised by that, and also, I mean, Vivian is like not the best, I think, thing that you can do for that amount of mana.
Yeah, but it's still a card that I like quite a bit at this stage in the curve. So, was there a mill theme in this iteration of the cube or not anymore? I don't remember if there was a mill archetype.
Oh, I don't remember. As
Okay.
you know, I told
Yeah.
you, I don't play much cube.
Yeah.
That's
Because
why you have to explain to me everything so I can actually
because
become decent.
that might explain why the Great Henge underperformed a little, because it's a card you can get milled with. But
Okay.
I think I'm trying to find reasons, and mill didn't exist anymore. I'm not sure.
And Reckoner Bankbuster, I was pretty surprised because that seems like a perfect cube card. No, it gets you like cards. Eventually, it gets you a threat.
It's pretty good, but it's also very mana intensive. I think the best decks for Bankbuster are actually the aggressive decks. Like the best use of the card is as a sideboard card for your aggressive deck against a more controlling deck. It's where it's going to shine the most, because you can actually crew it. You have the creatures to crew it, um, and usually your opponent is going to sideboard into a lighter version of their deck where you can actually outgrind them with something like Bankbuster. So maybe I was drafting it as a Maze Mind Tome when it wasn't exactly a Maze Mind Tome, and that's why the card underperformed a little.
That makes absolute sense. What we see again, one card that you were very high on in the format, and you drafted very aggressively, and was Solemn Simulacrum, and we see it on this list, which is not a good sign for it.
Yeah, so maybe I learned from it, and that's why I picked it less in the following iteration.
We know it.
Yeah.
You don't fool us here.
I don't know.
On the other hand, Rahilda also had a poor win rate, which shows that mono red was not the thing to do in that format, I guess, because Rahilda will be.
Yeah, one interesting card in this list is Menagerie Curator, which I think is a decent card, but I really wanted to try it like with all the possible type combinations, like to draw from a zombie or from a god, or there were a lot of random types in the cube, and it's the card that rewards you if you have only one card of each type in your deck, like you will draw from it. So I think I was a little too entertained by the deck building options.
You let the good old fun spoil the win rate.
Yeah.
I thought that you picked it just because it's the only card on that list that has a sort of French word in it.
It didn't even cross my mind.
Okay, I think that the rest is making sense. Kaltheim, we saw it before as also having a poor win rate when it was in the deck. So it means that it has both poor win rate when it is in the deck and also when you draw it from that deck. So I think that double confirmation there. Yeah. And also this means that you played it quite a lot in terms of as a card, because to get into game in hand win rate, you had much fewer cards that made the cut, because I took 10 games played in the deck for the games played win rate, but you had to draw a card 10 times to have the game in hand win rate, which means that it had to be there at least like played 20 something times in order to make the list. So that maybe is worth noticing, that Starnheim Unleashed is both played and was not very particularly good.
Okay.
Or the decks that played it were not particularly good. Here we have a collection of 6 cards with 100% win rate when you draw them. No Priest of Oblivion, Reckless Stormseeker, Llanowar Visionary, Blade Historian, March of the Wretched Sorrow, Unlicensed Hearst. Any thoughts on each of those cards?
Yeah, Null Priest of Oblivion is a card I really like, and you can basically see it as the Black Sea Guardian Evangel. It's not on the same power level, but it has the same strength as a decent 2-drop. Like it's better as a 2-drop than Sea Guardian Evangel. Even it doesn't have the 4 mana use, but it's very powerful for 6 mana. So it's the kind of 2-drop you're very happy to play that is never going to be bad. And 2/1 Lifelink Menace is actually very good. Like you should be playing it on turn 2 if you have nothing to do. It's going to do work. Other than that, a little surprised by the Black March of Wretched Sorrow. I wasn't aware I was playing it that much and that it performed that well.
Things we don't know. Unlicensed Hearst. Do you play it main deck or do you sideboard it in?
I think mostly sideboard, but I must have sideboarded it quite a lot if it appears on the slide.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I actually didn't check whether the cards were sideboarded or not because again, it's a very painful and long analysis. Even worse than getting the match wins. But yeah, I thought maybe you will remember. I mean, Blade Historian obviously that will be played in mono red decks, I guess.
Or Boros, like
Boros, yeah.
And it's also castable with any combination of mana, so very, very helpful.
Yeah, no, I mean it's and it tends to end games quite quickly, I guess.
Yeah, I remember a game where I beat a Great Henge with Blade Historian, like a Great Henge that had been going on for 6 turns, drawing a bunch of cards.
I mean, yeah, that's the chat noticed that Clifftop Retreat is here on the list of the cards that win the most when you draw them. But I mean, it's not completely irrelevant, especially since you had a lot of mono red decks that splashed white. Drawing that white source is going to improve your chances of winning because all the cards are all of a sudden castable in your deck.
Yeah, I remember that it took me some time in this cube to figure out whether I was supposed to play mono red with a splash or mono white with a splash or full on Boros. And so maybe that's why some of the white and red cards don't have win rates as high as I would have expected because I played them in the wrong mix, like with cards that didn't belong. And Clifftop Retreat basically saved all of these decks, like all of these decks that didn't have the perfect mana base, or where I stumbled a little during the draft on where I was supposed to go with the colors.
But yeah, I mean, in general, when we look past those, I mean, Llanowar Visionary is a bit of an odd one here because, well, you sort of like most of the cards are white red on the list, and when we have all of a sudden this Llanowar Visionary that is absolutely different style of deck.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a similar card as a Tireless Tracker, actually. Like both cards are quite similar. They can trade with an aggressive creatures and still net you a card. Maybe that's why.
And yeah, so there is this like sort of again slight signal of the black and green kind of mid range deck because the Null Priest, the Llanowar Visionary, the March, the Heartless Act is also in there. But apart from that, we have the Stormseeker. I mean, obviously that card is amazing and sort of plays the same role as Blade Historian, I guess, in terms of like pushing insane amount of damage. And also like against the control deck, they cannot do their normal strategy of not casting spells on their turn when you play the Stormseeker, I assume.
Yeah, the day-night thing is very powerful on the play because you can play Stormseeker against a blue deck, and then they just can't afford to keep 3 mana for their counterspell on turn 3. And most of the first counterspells in the game are usually going to cost 3 in the arena cubes. So when you're on the play and you want to resolve any of your insane 4-drops, and there are a lot of insane 4-drops, it's very helpful to force your opponent to do something on their turn 3.
Well, Matt Courier, that's obvious, but Faithful Absence. Do you play it as a sort of answer all in your aggro decks?
Yeah, I'm going to main deck it almost all the time if I'm a white aggressive deck, and I'm even going to play it in more controlling decks. I think it's versatile enough that that the downside isn't too problematic.
I mean, it's not that different from Assassin's Trophy in terms of what it does in the end.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
it gives them something, but at least they have to spend mana to use it.
Mm.
And how highly do you pick it? Do you just wait for it to trickle down later in the draft, or do you, if you know you're in the deck, like say pack 2, pack 3?
Yeah, if I know I'm white, I could pick it pretty highly in pack 2 or pack 3. Otherwise, I think I would wait until at least the middle of the pack.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, I mean, Embercleave, obviously, Lightning Strike, obviously, Usher of the Fallen, obviously, Kazandu Mammoth.
I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah.
again, I'm going to reiterate it, but a lot of this data will be noise and variance. So not every card does need to have absolute sense. It just could have happened that 9 games in a row aligned properly, and Kazandu Mammoth was featuring in them.
Maybe every time I won with the Great Hand, it was thanks to Kazandu Mammoth.
Possibly. Okay, let's look. Okay, and here comes exclude, counterspell, dismiss, negate. I see a trend there.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's
And that
funny
means we
that
played those cards quite a lot also. So
mhm. It's funny that negate and exclude are in the list because they are the conditional counterspells that work half the time each, and I guess you can have them the wrong half of the time.
it's possible. But no, I mean, there's still 60% win rate is not something to cry about. I mean, for me. But I found it, I saw it instantly that there's all those counter spells because they kindly have single word names, most of them. So they're very easy to spot. Also, farewell. That just shows that maybe control was not the thing to do.
Yeah, I think mostly what this shows is that I played control decks reluctantly in this format. Like I was trying to play more beatdown decks, and the times I played control, it didn't work out that well because the threats were just too good compared with the answers.
Cold Steel Heart appears again.
Yeah.
And I think that it was in both iterations, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Was it in June iteration, low play win rate?
Yeah,
Maybe
it
not.
appears.
Yeah, it is there. Okay, it is
yeah.
there. So it is sort of an underperformer from the data perspective, at least in your hands.
Looks like
And
it.
your hands tend to be quite capable, so possibly even worse for lower win rate players. And then Hourglass Coven, Rankle, Master of Pranks. I mean, 2 cards that on paper look great. And also maybe in the same theme, Massacre Worm.
Yeah, that's actually quite weird because I think Massacre Worm was like I would have said it's a great card in this iteration of the cube. Like if you play black, you're going to want it or even need it. The Hourglass Coven, maybe a little less so, but I still see it as a very strong card.
Yeah, I see you fighting against Andrew Cuneo playing Hourglass Coven time after time, and it looked quite annoying. And then 2 cards that I found probably most surprising from this list was Remorseful Cleric and Alseid of Life's Bounty. Is it because they are just your B quality white aggro cards, or?
Yeah, I think Alseid is not great because you need to keep mana up for it to work, and you don't want to keep mana up when you're curving out. So, like you can't afford to not do anything and wait to have that mana up, and so your opponent is going to use their removal spells on the curve creatures, and then you will have mana later, but maybe no more creatures. So I'm not a big fan of Alseid. I think it's good in Lurus deck specifically. Like if you have a Lurus companion, then
Okay.
Alseid is going to be great.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Companioning in cube.
Uh,
Rarely, never.
So it depends on the companion. I have very hard rules regarding some companions. Yorion, I never companion it. I think it's always a mistake because you don't have the mana base for it. Like that's the big thing. Your deck is going to be too diluted in terms of mana base and curve. So even if you have enough cards, and even if you have enough decent cards, the curve and the mana base are going to be all over the place. Keruga, I try to avoid it, especially if red is a good color and it happens to be a good color in the new cube, so I wouldn't companion Keruga either. Obosh, I never made it work, but I guess it's possible. But yeah, very very speculative. I tried sometimes,
Drops are
and
quite powerful in red, aren't they?
yeah, like the 4 drops are great and the 2 drops are great, and usually it's the 1 drops that are a little lackluster. So yeah, the ones that actually work sometimes. So lures can work sometimes, but what you need is mostly good interactive spells, things like Thoughtseize, Heartless Act, things like that. Like that's what's going to make your lures deck work, because these are cards that can trade for more expensive cards. So you don't
Faithful
find
Absence?
yourself Fateful Absence, yeah, exactly. So you don't find yourself at a disadvantage if the game lasts 4 or 5 turns because your opponent has more powerful cards. You need to be able to trade with the cheap ones. And which other companions are there in the cube? I think it's all.
I'm pretty sure they don't even dare to put Umori after they killed him with the
No,
Mulligan. I
no,
still
and
think that the companion should have old rules for limited, and that would be much better because Ikoria drafts with all companion rules was just so much better. So much better. Oh, Giganta is there.
yeah, Giganta, you don't want to make any effort for it. Like if your deck supports it, fine, play it. But like I'm not going to give up any good double pip card. Like maybe if I have only one, I'll companion Giganta. But usually I end up with 3 or 4, and they are all good, and I don't want to drop them.
Hmm.
Yeah, there was Giruda at some point, but they removed it. But Giruda was actually very good in Cube.
But yeah, again, because 2 drops and 4 drops are good.
Yeah.
I mean, when you can play Gonti and the No Priest of Oblivion in your Gyruda deck, I'm pretty sure that it's going to work pretty well.
Yeah, exactly.
What is my laser doing? Laser, stop. Okay. Ah, this is basically the end of the data slides. I have just the last 2 that are based on mulligans. Now, I almost never mulligan in best of 1, and I recommend almost never to mulligan in best of 1. But best of 3 is a different animal. You got much worse hands. I looked at your mulligan rates and opponents that you played mulligans rates. This is only based on the June because there was there was a minor glitch in the data from August, and some mulligan games were not recording, so I'm going to give that data set.
Okay.
But yeah, 26% is a lawful lot of mulliganing.
Yeah, it's apparent that I'm very unlucky. I think that's what the stat says unambiguously.
Yeah, Super Gaffer said that literally in the chat.
Okay.
And they know you. So,
No, I think I'm like with my years of playing, I learned to mulligan more, and that you can win games with 6 and 5 cards, and it's not a death sentence, and I think it reflects in this number. But I wouldn't have guessed it to be that different from my opponents.
yeah, no, 26 is actually quite a lot. I mean, quarter of the games when you mulligan. That's so. Now let's look at the results of that. The win rates with mulligan or without mulligan.
Maybe I mulligan too much then.
That was my conclusion. But of course, we cannot exclude that you would have lost even more of the games when you would have kept those dodgy hands. So
yeah, it's a little weird because I pride myself on the consistency of my decks. Like that's what I care about the most, is having like good curve, good mana base. I put a lot of effort into that. So I would have thought it would make me mulligan a little less and also win more when I mulligan, but apparently it wasn't the case.
I mean, it's still 58% of game win rate when you mulligan.
Sure.
He said in a disgruntled voice of someone that doesn't accept those kind of rookie numbers. Okay, well, that concludes my data point. But actually, the most interesting part, I think, hopefully, is to come, because I want to know your thoughts on the current iteration. We learned about the 2 previous ones, and I think that the biggest take-home message is that they will dramatically differ in what you want to be doing in them, and there are key cards to keep in mind. So, how is this cube? Do you like it so far?
So I have played, like, little disclaimer, I've played 5 or 6 drafts with it, so I'm far from having the big picture on the whole picture on the format, but maybe I can give you the big picture. I think black is the best color in the current iteration of the cube, because it both lends itself to aggressive decks when you combine it with red, and to controlling decks that actually work. So I think Yawgmoth might be secretly, or maybe not so secretly, the best card in the cube right now, even above Embercleave. So that's a theory I need to test, because obviously I haven't played that many matches, but I feel like the red deck has been nerfed quite a lot. There are still very insane cards with Embercleave, Glorybringer, stuff like that. Maybe Glorybringer is actually the best card in the cube. But when you exclude these cards and look at the medium, the more medium red cards, they're all quite lackluster. So yeah, I'm going to play red aggressive decks quite frequently, but I'm not going to try playing mono red. I think the quantity is just not there, and usually I'm going to have black or green as my second color. The other thing that is related to that is that the green in this cube, I think, is mostly aggressive. You want to play green as an aggressive color if possible. So with cards like Toski, as I said earlier, Esika's Chariot, that is not nerfed anymore, so it has become a very, very good card. Domri, all the Gruul cards. Alana and Alina is also an insane gold card. The Gruul gold cards are all very good. So yeah.
But as you're talking, I'm looking at the sort of what actually data says about the current cube iteration.
Okay.
I think that top 5 cards are all red, with the caveat that small sample sizes, because it's cube and it's not played enough yet, I think, to get the proper sizes, and that lots of cards are not played frequently enough to give you the number yet. So probably only maybe maybe 80, even less probably. Maybe only half of the cards have numbers that are large enough to give you a win rate at 17 lands.
I'm guessing you're looking at best of 3 data.
At best of 1.
Okay.
I'm looking at best of 1 because best of 3, one card has enough sample size to get to enough.
So yeah, I think that explains quite well why the red cards are overperforming. Just based on what best of 1 tends to favor. But I would guess these cards are Embercleave, Glorybringer, probably.
No, actually, it's Phoenix of Ash at number 1, and then Castle Ambreth, which I count as a red card, I guess.
Okay, interesting.
Battlecry Goblin, Seasoned Pyromancer, Viashino Pyromancer.
Really? Battlecry Goblin? Okay.
Then Goblin Chain Whirler is also there.
So maybe
Repositioner is just below that. I guess that there's just not enough Ember.
Oh, maybe there is
has a good 7 percentage points lower win rate than the cards I mentioned.
Okay. Maybe there is a secret recipe for best of 1 cube in this cube then.
There's Ophiomancer. Do you know that one?
Yeah, it's the 2/2 that
makes snakes.
Makes snakes. Yeah.
That's the top non-red card in the cube.
Yeah, so the metagame looks to be very geared towards aggression.
Yeah, and Evolved Sleeper is the second one that is on the list. And then, differences are quite small. There's Aldrin's Epiphany there as well, but yeah, I can see that black is also tilted towards aggression in the best of 1. There's Tenacious Underdog, the Sanguine Brushstroke. These are the kinds of cards that are there. Mayhem Devil is quite high.
Yeah. At the moment, anyway, red-black is the archetype that impressed me the most on the few drafts I played, because it can both go pretty hard on aggression with cards like Underdog. The black 1-drops are annoying to deal with and can usually put on some damage. And then you have all the best black and red 4 and 5 drops, and there are quite a lot of them. And they also synergize with each other, which you don't really find in red white. You have synergy in addition to raw power.
So how high would you pick a Fable of the Mirror Breaker if you would be keeping that kind of a deck in mind for drafting?
I would first pick it. Like, it's a card I'm happy first picking in this cube.
I'm still amazed that this card for such a long time was overlooked in Constructed.
Yeah, including by myself. Like, it's a card I completely ignored for a while.
I mean, I think that there should be a new rule that the card that has the highest win rate in draft on 17 lands that costs under 4 mana should be considered as a constructed playable, because it was the same with Luminarch Aspirant, which it also took a bit time to become a staple in aggressive decks.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but at the time of Battle for Zendikar, there was a common called Eldrazi Sky Spawner that was very, very good in limited. Like, it was a 2/1 flyer for 3 in blue that made a spawn token. And at some point, it started seeing play in Constructed, and everyone was like, "What? Like, what is it about this card?" And it was played in Standard. It was played in the modern Eldrazi decks, obviously, because there were the Eldrazi lands. But yeah, it's the sort of card that can be overlooked if you don't look at limited.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that a lesson there is that the people that play Seaward should pay more attention to the data from limited, because you might find cards like, think about the staples of Constructed in the recent. I mean, how many of them were number 1 cards in draft? Like Esika's Chariot was number 1 card in Kaldheim. Luminarch Aspirant was the number 1 card in wherever it was. Fable of the Mirror Breaker, number 1 card in Kamigawa. So yeah. And it's obviously, I mean, it's tilted towards cheaper cards. I don't think that, the 6 mana or 7 mana bombs are going to be good and Constructed. But if you see a cheap card that posts incredible numbers in limited, you probably should consider. And people played Inspired Overseer in Constructed decks as well in some cases.
Yeah.
So apart from black red, what else would you suggest for this iteration of the cube?
So I think green aggressive decks are fine, but you need to combine green with either red or white for the counters sub-theme to also have synergy in your deck. So it will be based around cards like Hardened Scales or Conclave Mentor, but you don't even necessarily need these cards for the archetype to work. Like, even a curve of Hangerback Walker into Rishkar, or like there are little counter synergies that don't rely on the main payoffs. What else? I think Blue-Red Spells is quite good, but also quite hard to get because the cards are specific and there are not so many of them. Like, a lot of them were cut from the previous iterations. So if you manage to get the blue-red specific stuff, you can have a very, very good blue-red deck. But you need for it to be open, and you can't really.
So which cards are your musts for building a blue-red?
Let's see. Yeah, can I put up the list somewhere so I
Sure.
So I know what I'm talking about. The Arena Cube list. I guess Expressive Iteration is in the cube. So that's going to be a big one.
Yeah, Expressive. I have the best way of doing it. I sorted by the number of times played in blue-red decks and 17 lands, actually.
Yeah.
Expressive Iteration, Magma Opus, Smoldering Egg, Sublime Epiphany, Ral, Young Pyromancer.
Yeah, Young Pyromancer is a big one. I also think Burn Down the House is an important piece because when you're not playing an aggressive deck, you really need to sweep the board in this version of the cube.
Sprite Dragon?
Sprite Dragon is a little... Like, I'm not sure about it because it's a tempo card, and I think most of the blue-red decks are going to be more controlling, ideally. So I prefer playing sweepers to cards like Sprite Dragon that really want to be attacking.
Okay, so you don't want to play the sort of tempo small creatures, nickel and diming. You'd rather play... So what do you think about, like... Because there's a couple of those spells-based decks in Constructed right now, and they have, most of the time, the standard, they have Haughty Djinn and Solarian Terror, which both are in the cube.
Yeah, I like Haughty Djinn. Like, Haughty Djinn, in my mind, is a control card, or at least an aggro control card, like a Delver style card that you want to play. Like maybe Delver is not the best analogy, but it's a card that can be one of the only threats in your deck. And you don't play it on turn 3. You play answers in the first turns, and then you set up your Otigin and you kill in one or two swings, and that's how you want to use the card. So in my mind, it's a control card when Sprite Dragon isn't. So yeah, I really like the sweepers if I'm not playing an aggressive deck. I think the cube is quite board centric. Like most decks are going to play to the board. So if I'm playing a white control deck, I really need something like Day of Judgment or Farewell. And if I'm playing a red control deck, like for example blue-red, I need Burn Down or Sweltering Suns or something like that. And ideally
Magma
several.
Quake.
Yeah, maybe. Like if I don't find anything better, it can do the trick.
I'm just looking there. So Tolarian Terror, would you play it? And is it powerful enough for cube?
It's on the fence. It can be quite hard to punch on the ground. Like for example, imagine there's a Hangerback Walker on the other side of the table. Like your Tolarian Terror is going to be miserable. It's going to take ages to kill someone. So I would say the best blue-red decks won't play it, but maybe sometimes it will find its way into a deck.
I mean, I assume like every cheap removal is good. So the
Yeah.
lightning strikes, the obliterating bolts.
Yeah, a bolt especially, like obliterating bolt, the exile clause I found to be quite relevant.
Mephit's Enthusiasm.
Yeah, pretty good as well.
What about Shark Typhoon in those kind of decks?
Overrated, I would say. I think Shark Typhoon is a card that is chronically overrated in practically all formats. Like it's very solid. Like it's a card you will always find a use for, but most of the uses are disappointing. Like when you make a 1/1 or 2/2 shark and draw a card, sure, like you don't feel like you've played a constructed card.
Don't you think it has something to do with the fact that the level of players that you're playing against in those tournaments, it basically they know that you have it in your hand every time, so they will never like run into it. And when you play like lower stakes Magic, all of a sudden it gains like so much power because people will just run into your sharks.
It's possible. It's possible that I've been trained to play against players that never attack into a shark the same way they wouldn't attack into a Setter of the Wreckage with all their creatures, and that as a result I undervalue these cards a little. But
I see the chat also mentioning Ledger Shredder being good. I think that this is like a early thread that you will be quite happy with.
Yeah,
because I think that a lot of those blue-red decks tend to flood out in the end, and I think that discarding those lands and drawing gas might be just what you want at some stage.
Maybe another thing I would say is that I tend to work under the assumption that my opponents are going to be good to great Magic players, and I think in Cube it's even more important because there is a lot of edge to be gained in the gameplay. Like the Cube games tend to be quite complicated because there is a lot of text on the cards compared to a regular limited game, and also like the games are very different compared to constructed. So I think it's a very like skill intensive format. And so if there is a big skill level between you and your opponent, you will often be able to overcome it. So I like trying to target the best decks and the best players in the way I'm drafting.
It's also maybe you will have a slightly enriched group because I think that in the best of 3 runs of Arena, it's usually people that either have no idea why they should play best of 3, or the ones that love best of 3.
Yeah,
and these will be usually quite powerful. Okay, so maybe because you talked about Black Red as being the best deck, so I'm going to go through again the most played cards in the red. Black Red, and I have Mayhem Devil as number 1. That's an auto include in every deck, I assume.
Yeah, if you're playing Black Red, you're playing Mayhem Devil for sure.
Mulligan Command.
Same auto include.
Okay, then Lance, obviously. Immerstrom Predator.
Same auto include, and you can even play it in decks that are not base black red. You can splash it in Gruul. You can splash it. It's a very very annoying card to play against. And some archetypes, like some archetypes, almost can't beat it. Like if you're playing Gruul and you face Immerstorm Predator, you're in big trouble.
Again, I've seen you fighting against Immerstorm Predator,
Yeah,
and it basically losing through it, because there's just no way of removing it at some stage, and that's what the card does. Fable, obviously, a tenacious underdog. I assume yes.
yeah.
Lagomos, it's played a lot, but I don't know if it's strong enough, or is it better than it was in its limited?
I don't really know. I have never played it. Never played it in cube, so I assume it's fine and you can play it, but I don't know how often I would.
I mean, I wonder. It seems like in this particular format, because of the power of the cards, you might actually once in a blue moon activate the ability of tutoring.
It happened to me that my opponent activated it, but it was on a turn where I was already dead, so I've never seen it really
Well, what
matter.
about the Mishra is one of the more play card, but I don't know. Is it powerful enough in the cube, or is it
Uh,
chasing the dream of melding it?
yeah, I think this one might be influenced by people's wet dreams of Mishra plus Dragon Engine, which are like decent cards in their own rights, and you want like you're going to play them without each other some percentage of the time, but I don't think Mishra on its own is a great card.
Yeah, I think that in the sacrifice deck, I would be up for playing Dragon Engine
Yeah,
on its own.
yeah, I
Uh,
think so.
Blood Artist, Sanguine Brushstroke, Priest of Forgotten Gods. These do
Yeah,
the same things.
all great. With maybe the caveat that your deck needs to be sacrifice centric. And like I've had black red decks that were more on the aggressive side and didn't have that much synergy. Like when the colors are really open, sometimes you have just a bunch of good cards, good aggressive cards, and you don't have that much sacrifice synergy going on. So in that case, Blood Artist can be a little disappointing
So
sometimes, but
you want to have your Jadar, you want to have the thing that makes the snakes, I guess.
yeah,
Like these will be probably two like top cards for the sacrifice fodder generation.
yeah,
Yawgmoth obviously you would include.
yeah.
Woe Strider,
Yeah, Ghost Rider, very good enabler plus payoff in the same card, so makes your deck quite stable.
Seasoned Pyromancer,
Yes, depending on the mana base, but if you can afford it, yeah.
Bone Crusher, Siege Gang Commander. It looks all bangers basically.
Yeah,
Like,
all these cards are great. Like,
and I'm
it's
reading just the list of the top cards
yeah,
played in this archetype by what people put in. Deadly Dispute, I assume, also good.
yeah.
There's the Ophiomancer. Cult Conscript, is it good enough? Is it strong enough to?
It's like it's a worse version of Gutter Bones most of the time, but you're still going to play it because it's like it can make a big difference to play something on turn one or not. So usually it makes it in for curve reasons, even though the card isn't great.
And now we're going into slightly lower cards, but there's Rankle, there's Siege Gang Commander. I guess that you need some sort of top end, and they're fine.
Yeah,
I guess if you're generating like loads of the stuff with your Jadars and the Ophiomancer, then Rankle's sacrifice a creature skill becomes quite powerful.
yeah. I think like when you talk about cards like Rankle and even Blood Artist, it becomes a matter of balance in your deck. Rather than just individual power, like Rankle is going to be great if your deck is flooded with sacrifice fodder, and it can be quite poor otherwise. So
Mm.
it
Yeah,
depends.
no, I guess you have to have like
Mm.
generation of some sort of value from that. And either like cards that are like, okay, there's some removal. Krenko,
The little Cranko, right? The 1/2.
yeah,
I think this card is high variance, but very, very high ceiling. It's the sort of card that sometimes wins the game on its own, but I think it happens less in this version of the cube. Like I had a very high opinion of the card. The few times I've played it in the new cube, it hasn't performed that well because I feel like there is more removal than there used to be. Like more removal, more blockers. Um, I'm still going to play it, but maybe I should get a little down on it.
like we have Gonti.
Yeah, overrated. Same as Shark Typhoon. Like it's a card that is very fun to play with, but not always
I
great.
would have thought about it, but okay, I'm good to have the braids. On the other hand, I think it might be good in the same build as you were saying that generates a lot of cheap disposable things. Though.
Yeah, braids is at its best when you generate artifacts, because your opponents are not going to have disposable artifacts very
So,
often.
for example, if you have Magda,
Yeah, Magda, any treasure generator, things that make blood. I don't know if there are many of them, but
there's a couple. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, yeah, there was the Sanguine Brushstroke, for example, and there is, I think, the one.
yeah.
What about Lolth?
Lolth is pretty good. Yeah, Lolth I'm going to play almost all the time if I'm a Black Sacrifice deck.
I'm again thinking like with that maybe that's like Lagomos is a secret third version of the same thing as Jadar, and because those things just grow Lolth like crazy. I think if you have like some combination of them,
Yeah.
because you can like Decade Zombies you always get rid of. The Elemental from Lagomos is always you can get rid of it.
Hmm.
Snakes you need to sacrifice outlet, but it's quite easy, I guess. Wow. Morbid Opportunist. Now, this is a card that I don't know if it can be good. I want maybe your opinion on that.
It's fine. I don't think there is Midnight Reaper in the cube. I think they cut it.
I
And
think they might have.
yeah, an opportunist is most of the time a bad version of it, but it works with the tokens. So it works with Lagomos, it works with the Decade tokens from Jadar, if you can assemble that. So it depends on like if you have many cards that go to the graveyard by themselves, or many or removal spells as well. Like sometimes you can set up a turn where you play opportunist and 1 or 2 mana removal spell
You
in
know
the
what? I
same
think
turn.
that after the stream, I'm just gonna go and hard force sacrifice.
I mean,
Just
it's
basically shamelessly hard force it.
yeah. As we have seen, there are just a lot of cards and a lot of good cards. So
Yeah, no, I mean it's banger after banger. I now see Chandra, Acolyte of Flame. That's another 2 sacrifices a turn.
mm,
Like you can literally play Lagomos if you have the collection of those cards. You can just naturally sacrifice 5 creatures at the end of your turn and then tutor yourself for something.
mm,
Sheldred, I guess, is just good enough on rate.
yeah,
I mean, Bastion of Remembrance, I'm pretty sure that in the build that I'm thinking of, it's just absolutely broken.
yeah, just like Blood Artist. Yeah,
Okay, and Hero Legion War Boss, that's maybe like less priority. Rekindling Phoenix, less priority. There is Gutterbones as well.
mm. But maybe the lesson, like one of the lessons to draw from all that is that you need to have a plan against that archetype if you're playing the open. And so if you're playing something a little grindier, you need to have ways to like to get rid of all this sacrifice stuff and not just kill creatures because they will come back, but either exile them or have a like a proactive plan that is really strong, like something like Eldor Gargaroth, for example, that can lets you ignore all the shenanigans on the other side.
You just block it with your Death Touch Snake.
Yeah, sure, but yeah.
No, I mean, of course, yeah, no, but I can see it. Shambling Gust, I assume, will be good because it's just.
Yeah, Shambling Guest is, I think, in the low tier of enablers you're ready to play.
And so, would you play rather? So, Gutterbones is better than the other one, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the conclusion. And probably you should never play both of them in the same deck. Or
Oh, you could. Yeah, you could play both in the same deck.
what about Transmorgan's Crown?
Never played with it in cube, so I don't know.
Because that card is played in Black Red Sacrifice in the C word. No.
Yeah, I would guess it's underpowered compared to everything we've mentioned, but maybe it can find its spot.
Agadim's Awakening. I think that looks pretty decent.
It's always worse than it reads because it's pretty hard to return a 1-drop with it. So yeah, I'm on the fence about Awakening. I've had decks where I initially thought it would be good, and it ended up just being a bad swamp.
I mean, I think that from the cards we looked at, there was quite a lot of good 1-drops, and that's I think what slightly
Yes,
makes me
but
think it might be decent because
these 1-drops come back by themselves. Like Gutterbones and Conscript come back by
there's also
themselves.
Voldaren Epicure in terms of your blood generation.
Yeah.
And then lots of 1 mana interaction. Gix, Yawgmoth Praetor. That's something you want to play?
Not really. Maybe in the most aggressive versions, but like you can see how bad it is with Blood Artists. Like these maybe don't belong in the exact same build.
In the ways that in Blood Artist versions you want to drain your opponent by losing creatures, or
Yeah, like the Blood Artist versions are going to be a little more defensive in how they play. Like you're going to get the free damage sometimes with your recursive creatures and so on, but you have the ability to grind out people. Like I guess both versions want Gutter Bones, and Gutter Bones kind of links Jix to Blood Artist. Like it's going to be good with both, but maybe there is a more aggressive version and a more sacrifice based version.
and then we see cards that are less played, and we have like Glorybringer, Embercleave, the 4 mana Chandra, Hourglass Coven. They seem to be at least not prioritized, but you would probably play Thoughtseize much more than other people would.
Yeah, I would play Thoughtseize every single time. If I'm in black, like any black deck in Cube, is going to have Thoughtseize for me.
What else we have? Blah blah blah. Not really. Would you play Dragon Rage Channeler in those kind of decks, or is it another card that you think is overrated?
Yeah, maybe a little overrated. It's Delirium is hard to get in this cube. Like in the arena cubes in general, it's not easy to come by Delirium. So same thing with Unholy Heat. It's a card I'm not really happy to play.
Okay, that's actually a good one. There's another one that actually might be another 1-drop in Ashnod. Would you play it in your sacrifice?
I've been disappointed with the card.
Okay. Well, that settles it. Do you want to do one more archetype, or do you want to have your freedom?
We can do one more archetype, but hopefully there will be fewer good cards.
Okay, so pick an archetype that you think might be still good in this format, and we'll see what the 17 lands users are putting in it.
I'll go with green-white counters, like green-white.
Okay, good. That was actually what I would have suggested, so that's pretty well aligned. Okay, top card is Conclave Mentor. I assume that's an auto-include.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the reason of going into it, I guess.
Like it's not. I wouldn't say it's not necessary for the deck to work, but it's like the cherry on the cake if you have that or Hardened Scales.
Then we have the Pathway, Sandpetal Grove, Temple Garden, and Brushland.
Okay,
Obviously,
nice.
that you probably want to put them in your white-green deck. We have Elves, Llanowar Elves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes.
Yeah, all the time.
Esika's Chariot.
All the time.
Ajani Sleeper Agent.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I haven't played it in Cube, but I think it's pretty nice. Like it's the kind of card that gives you resilience to interaction, but also makes board presence when you need it with the -3. So I think I'm going to play it if I have it. Yeah.
Drizzt.
Which one? The 3/3 double strike.
Double strike that brings a 4/1 cat, and when it dies.
It's funny. I never play this card. I don't pick it very highly, but I often play against it, and it's always fine. So yeah, I guess we will need to compare it with other 5-drops. But I think in green-white it's going to be better than most green 5-drops. So why not?
We have another 5-drop, and it's Elspeth Conquers Death.
Okay, this one might be less good in green-white, for example. It's great in blue-white when you can blink it with Yorion and stuff like that. But in green-white, you want your 5-drops to put even more pressure if possible.
But I mean, it's not many things that can deal with like big things as well.
Yeah, that's true. But usually
you go bigger than them because you put counters on your stuff.
When you play green-white, the ways you have to beat, like for example, a big creature like a Gargaros or something like that, are usually things like Mana Tithe or Primal Might. Primal Might is a very good one. I guess we'll get to it. or Fateful
If we
Absence.
scroll long enough, we'll get to any card.
Okay.
Even the black ones, which will have 0 sample size. But Dromoka's Command.
Yeah, great card. Good reason to play green-white, actually. Like, maybe even more so than Conclave Mentor.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's that good. Yeah.
So one thing I know from the data analysis is that the better the player, the better they do with modal cards. This is the modal cards are the cards where the difference between the top tier 17 lens user and the lower tier 17 lens user, the difference is way bigger than you would expect by comparing their average win rates. So, I mean, I assume that against red, you just use the mode of preventing damage very often to completely destroy their
Yeah.
plan. No,
It will happen, especially against sweepers, like Burn Down the House, Tower of Extinction. Like, you can counter a sweeper, which is pretty awesome.
that
It
is
acts.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
You can counter this devil's play in your face that goes for lethal, and that also might.
Yeah.
Sacrifices enchantment. I assume that it will come into use sometimes.
Yeah, it does come up. There are some removals that are enchantments, like Seal Away or Cast Out, maybe. Like, I guess there are other white enchantments that remove stuff.
Yeah, probably they put the static net, didn't they?
Maybe, yeah. I don't
Knowing
remember.
what's putting new cards. And I guess that the default is just put a +1/+1 counter and then fight, no?
Yeah, and the good thing is that you can put the counter on another creature than the one that fights, and that's actually quite important for the card because it lets you, like, even when you play it in front of open mana, you don't get blown out quite as much as with a regular fight spell if you split it properly. Same thing for Inscription, like the green Inscription, Inscription of Abundance. It's also a card that I like quite a lot for a lot of the same reasons.
I mean, I loved it in the original draft format because it was just unfair what it was doing in the context of less powerful cards. Gala Greeters, that's the next card we have on the list.
I don't know. It's like it has moments where it's completely absurd. For example, with Adeline, I had a game where my opponent went Gala Greeters into Adeline, and it was miserable because every turn you make 2 creatures, and but the problem with Gala Greeters is that it's a very poor top deck. Like, if you compare it to something like Evangel or Luminarch Aspirants, it doesn't have the same
Yeah,
staying
but
power.
I mean, maybe some of the viewers are less unlucky than you, and they will just only draw it in their opening hand.
That's true. Yeah, so you can count on it then.
We should maybe make a list of the top 10 most unlucky pros, and we can have a fight between you and LSV, who is the more unlucky one.
I think LSV is more unlucky than me, given the number of times he has said it.
Oh yeah, on the number of times he said it, that definitely is. Also, the best player in California, based on the number of times he said it. Titania's Command.
Definitely a great card. I haven't had the chance to play it that much so far, but I guess it's going to make the cut most of the time.
Yeah, that's what ate all my gems in last Arena Open when I tried to qualify, because it went well, and then I bumped into a deck with Titania's Command that was obliterating me. Should have just put the deck made out entirely of counterspells just to remove that from the equation. Tireless Tracker, still good enough.
Tireless Tracker, still good enough. I'm going to fight for this card until my dying breath. I think
in the counters it gains extra potential synergy.
Yeah, but even like outside of that, it's just it's like a better version of Reckoner Bankbuster if you play green, like a threat that puts pressure while drawing cards. It does both at the same time when Bankbuster has to wait for a little before attacking.
Dice to shock.
Sure, but not really. Like, you 2-for-1 the shock. Like, you don't want to play Tireless Tracker without a land drop. Like,
yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
and if you play it with 2 lands untapped, it basically doesn't die to shock. And also, there's no shock in the format, I think. Elvish Mystic, I assume.
Yeah.
But the funny part is that
Lanoir is
Llanowar Elf is so much higher than the Elvish Mystic. I mean, it's only that shows you the power of variance. I assume that people know Maybe there is like a small effect that people don't know the Elvish Mystic as well as they do Llanowar Elf.
Yeah, maybe the weight of history plays a part in this. I don't know.
Okay, Luminar Aspirant, I guess I'm auto include.
Yeah, I think it should be higher on the list, like much higher. But
I mean, it might be lower. It's not on the. It's based on how many times people played it, and
okay,
it might be lower on the list because it's picked higher, so people have it less frequently.
makes sense.
Because
Yeah.
Alsa of Llanowar Elf is much higher than the Alsa of. Well, it's some amount higher than the Alsa of.
hmm
Actually, Alsa of Conclave Mentor is very low. It will wheel almost probably like
Yeah.
70 times,
Maybe,
70% of the time.
yeah, maybe that might also explain why cards like Glorybringer and Embercleave have lower win rates than some of the red 2-drops, because people pick them very highly and sometimes don't play them in the right decks or push too hard to make them work. I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually that's something from I cannot contribute on the strategy of Cube because I'm rubbish in it, as we determined before. But the cards that are multicolor are having extremely high alsas. So like Drizzt, you will be able to get very easily. Ajani you will get very easily. Dromoka Command very easily. It wheels like probably around 70-80% of the time when you open it.
Mm.
So there is a consideration that if you have an aspirant, you might pick aspirant, pick one, and then you can almost guarantee yourself that this conclave mentor is going to wheel.
Yeah, exactly. And these cards you want to keep an eye on when you are in the early picks of your first pack, because as you said, they will wheel quite often. And so if you have green or white as your main color and you know it's open, the presence of a conclave mentor on the wheel can entice you to go into green-white more than other archetypes.
Sorry, just a question to Gaffer in the chat. No, Teferi doesn't go late because people love Teferi. It goes quite early as Luminate Aspirant, basically. What else do we have then? Rishkar?
Pretty good, yeah. In this archetype, it's not to include probably.
But then you have to be like properly stuck on counters, I guess.
Yeah.
Welcoming Vampire?
Yeah, I guess you'll play it most of the time. It can clash, like it clashes with the Great Henge because the incentives are not the same. And like usually you will be very happy to play the Great Henge, and maybe that will disincentivize you to play Welcoming Vampire in the same decks. But maybe I'm overvaluing the Great Henge as shown by previous slides.
Well, maybe not in this iteration.
Yeah.
We still don't know about
Yeah.
this iteration. You know, I will have to get you one more time on the cube, and we will look at through all the other iterations and then see how you completely abuse different strategy every time. Skyclave Apparition.
Great card, yeah. Especially because sometimes your green-white deck is going to have some blink elements in it. Like sometimes no one is on the blink archetype, and you can get stuff like Restoration Angel, Skyclave Apparition, Elite Spellbinder, Ephemerate, all great cards that you can play without a heavy blink theme. And so if you put these cards into your green-white counters deck, there will be a nice little synergy package.
I mean, we know how much you love Teleportation Circle.
Not that one.
Felidar Retreat.
I don't. Yeah, Felidar Retreat is a hard one because you want to put counters on everyone, but you need lands, and
You don't want to put lands in your deck too much.
There are situations where you won't be able to play more than one land after your retreat, and it's pretty awkward. So I would see it more as a green ramp card than a green-white counters card.
Okay, so maybe a different sub build that focuses more on, or maybe even like some kind of a green build with ability of having lots of mana and having this as a single splash, maybe. Loxodon?
Yeah. Loxodon is great. Yeah, Loxodon is very powerful. Probably underrated by most people.
It goes very late, so you heard it here first. Jean-Emmanuel Depraz recommended venerated Loxodon. Get them while you can because they're open. Great Henge. Now this card doesn't go late.
Yeah, and I still think it shouldn't go late, but we'll see.
Intrepid Adversary. Adversary, I think.
I don't know. It's medium, not an auto include.
Okay. I'll give. Oh, what? This is also a weird one. That overgrown farmland goes much is picked much less for some reason than all the other dual lands that were ages ago.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense because you would want to carve
You want
out.
your early land to fix, yeah.
Yeah, ideally you would want to carve out from turn 1, but it's funny that Sun Petal Grove is that much higher.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah.
it also have a
Again,
constraint. Yeah,
it might be variance, but
yeah.
it's quite a large difference, to be fair. They're like at around 300, and this is around 200 in terms of how many times they were played. Bosiju
A very good card. Yeah.
also goes
In
relatively late. Mikaeus,
very good card in this archetype. Yeah.
Emperor.
Maybe the best white card in the cube, and it's also good in this archetype, even though maybe less so than in others. Like the best build
It's
for
counters.
Emperor. Yeah, it's counters, but you don't make that much use of the flash part. But yeah, I'm going to play Emperor 100% of the time if I'm white.
Yeah, like I mean,
Yeah.
if a white green pauses to not cast something and leave 4 mana untapped,
Mm.
even I will be suspicious, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, but the good thing in this cube is that there are Emperor and Restoration Angel and also Kyodai at 4 mana with flash. So
Okay,
it's not that obvious.
okay, but at least I will be worried.
Yeah.
Hardened scales.
Yeah, auto include in this archetype, but you need to have the critical mass, obviously. Like you need. I I don't like giving numbers for these things because it's like it depends on the specific cards also. But I would guess if you have 5, 6 cards that include counters somewhere, you probably want to play Arden Scales, and usually you will have more without effort if you
And
are
I
in
think
the
we mentioned
yeah.
at least 7 of good cards that contain
Yeah,
counters in their theme. Like we had Rishkar, we had Mikaeus, we had what else there was there? Well, Great Hench sort of,
yeah.
although maybe
Uh,
not as
not.
aspirant.
Mhm.
Tracker, Titania's Command, Gala Greeters. I mean, all those things contain counters. Even the Drizzt, if you really wanted to.
Yeah, Hangerback Walker maybe won't appear in this list or very far, but
Hangerback Walker, we forgot about that. Is
it's also
important card.
also a great reason.
How do you feel about defending the temple?
The temple, which
Julian
one?
defends the temple.
Oh, so I was talking about it on stream yesterday. Actually, it's interesting because it has conflicting incentives. It incentivizes you to play creatures before it, so you can put relevant counters on creatures and not only on the little monk that won't attack. But also, if you wait too long to play it, you won't get the rewards of the second half. So it's a hard card to play and to value. It's still pretty good, and I'm still going to play it in most decks. But I haven't figured it out yet, like how good it is.
Just out of trivia, it's an under 4 mana casting spell that was really good in limited format that it was in.
Yeah, yeah, it has some of
It might have the
the
C-word potential.
it has some some similarities with Fable for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like the Fable's weaker brother.
yeah.
Vorinclex.
Um, a a good curve topper, maybe outclassed by Titania's command now. So maybe you don't want to pick it as highly. But also Kogla is gone. So I guess Kogla has been replaced by Titania's command, so the number of good 6 drops doesn't change.
I
Uh,
always suffer when they remove an Ikoria card for some kind of new things. Why? Why would you do that? History of Benalia.
Overrated, including by me for a while, because there is no real knight sub-theme, so you don't get much more than what is written on the card. The double white is a problem, and it doesn't have uh, real synergies with the counters or anything you're doing. So like it's a powerful aggressive card, but you need a white base, like you need to be base white, and it's not an auto include even then, I would say.
Okay, be wary. Simian Simulacrum.
I think this one is quite good, but I don't have much to say about it. But yeah, I think it's quite good, and you will play it most of the time in this archetype.
Now this card is definitely good, but I just don't know if it's good in this particular deck because maybe you want to be heavier on the green part. But Adeline,
Oh, it is. Oh, Adeline. Yeah, Adeline is also always great, and I think you want like if you compare it with History of Benalia. With History, I would want to have other reasons to be base white. With Adeline, I'm ready to make some effort to be base white because the card is just too pushed.
okay, Tangled Florahedron.
Huh, interesting. I'm not sure if it's an auto include or not, actually. If you have things like Chariot, like very good 4 drops, you will play it, but maybe not in all the white green decks.
Yeah, and there was not like that amazing amount of 4 drops that you want to be ramping into. Like
Yeah,
Chariot is definitely one, and then there's the Emperor.
yeah.
But
Also, it does. Yeah, it doesn't work very well with Emperor because you
yeah,
need the
no, not at
double
all.
white, and with Toski either because you want to attack, so you don't want to play a mana dork before Toski.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Oh, so yeah, yeah. Let's not forget, Toski is busted in counters, isn't it? That's what you basically said.
yeah, it's very good in
Yeah,
this
because if you
archetype.
can make it like a 9/9 indestructible, that's a plus.
Yeah, even lower than that. Yeah.
Reclamation Sage.
I think this one used to be an auto include and isn't anymore, but
What what
I
if they put the
haven't.
Knights of Autumn? That would be so much better for this archetype.
Sure, yeah. I would like. Yeah, I guess we have Loran now, so they don't want
Ah,
to put too many of that effect. But
make space for the new kid. Touch the Spirit Realm.
I guess auto include, like unless you have. Like if you have Dromoka's command, like if you have all the synergy based removal spells, maybe you won't play it. But it's a card I pick quite highly and I play quite often.
You can
Like
also
it,
use the Blink, like
yeah,
a sort of one
sure.
turn teleportation circle.
Mm.
Um, Inscription of Abundance. I mean, I assume auto include.
Mhm.
Spellbinder.
Auto
Evie.
include. Yeah, I'm surprised that Spellbinder, Inscription, and even Adeline are that low on the list compared to things like I don't know Galagriters. Like I think there's a big gap in power level.
Pelt Collector. I think that looks pretty decent for this.
Decent, but be wary of the number of creatures with 3 or more power because there are not that many, and also clashes with a Welcoming Vampire, to get back to what we said.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess it's either or
Yeah,
in those cases.
yeah.
Jetmir's Garden is played much less than any of the others, although, yeah, it has the same problem as not promoting your mana in the early game.
Yeah, but on the other hand, Halana and Alina is a great card in this archetype. So you want to splash it if you have the opportunity.
Uh, some of my best decks was Halana Alina splashing blue white for some reason in draft, and it worked fantastically for some reason. I had what was the guy that made the 1/1 spirit, the Brian Comer, yeah,
Brand Comber, yeah. Mm.
Brian Comer and Halina Alina in one deck. That was something that was absolutely perfect.
Okay.
Patriarch's Humiliation.
I don't really know. Yeah, I really don't know. I actually I don't think I ever played this card in Cube, so for some reasons, but it looks fine.
I mean, I guess you have to be sort of more go widey, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's also the issue with Kabira Takedown, and might explain why it didn't perform that well for me. If the green white decks are go tall as opposed to go wide, these cards lose in value.
But I mean, isn't it sometimes even worse to get rid of Gargaroth's abilities on top of everything?
Yeah, you can do stuff like that, like Gargaroth, Rekindling Phoenix. Yeah. Mm.
Oh yeah, that one. Voracious Hydra. Is it important to have?
No, like it's a worse version of So yeah, it's interesting because I'd rather have Dromoka's Command or Green Inscription, but it's a fine version of that effect. And also, Hydra becomes much better if you have Hardened Scales and the Conclave Mentor, because you put extra counters each time. Like you put an extra counter and then you double, and by doubling you also put an extra counter.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can become quite big quite soon. Timeless Witness. Do you need it in this deck?
Only if you have good removal spells. I think the best use of the card is to bring back your removal spells in this deck.
Love Struck. Be careful when you have a Henge, I guess.
It's pretty good. Like I'm going to play it if I have a few other 1/1s, but you don't want it to be your only 1/1, I guess.
No, probably not. But I mean, it's also not bad with Pelt Collector, I guess. Tenacious Pup. Not the 1/1, importantly.
Yeah, it's okay. It's good with Hangerback Walker because it gives it vigilance, as we saw yesterday on stream.
I'm gonna scroll down and find the. Is it in this cube actually?
But yeah, it is in the cube. Yeah.
Okay. Spirited Companion. That's a good one for the Love Struck Beast, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty bad in this archetype. You want more beef than that on your 2-drop.
Oh, it's sad now.
Sorry.
Tusky, and that's a good one for your Love Struck Beast.
That is a good 1/1.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we
Found
can.
the perfect 1/1 for 4 mana. Goose.
Which one?
The Gilded Goose.
Oh, I don't like Gilded Goose. I play it when I don't have enough mana dorks, but I think it's a pretty bad mana dorks for a lot of the same reasons as Courier's Briefcase, even if it's of course a better card, but like it has the same issue that it doesn't ramp you on successive turns, consecutive turns. Sorry.
I can see that. AO.
Pretty good, but overshadowed by better 5-drops, surprisingly enough.
So Gargaroth, basically.
Yeah, Gargaroth, even a Defiler, like the green Defiler, I think is a.
No, I've seen that doing beautiful things on your stream, by the way.
Yes, sometimes better, yeah.
Elish Norn, I assume you will say overrated and too expensive for that archetype.
Yeah, it can be a sideboard plan, but not much more.
Emeria Skull? Flood Insurance?
I'm not in love with this one. I think I prefer Agonjo or other lands that do similar stuff.
Like this one, I think will be pretty good. Skooz.
Skooz is very good, yeah. Wow, Skooz is
Because, like, especially with the sacrifice things, you might want to get rid of graveyards.
Yeah, it's way down on the list. I'm shocked. I had forgotten about it, but great.
Yeah, and it's actually not picked very highly. It's picked decent, but not very highly. It will wheel probably around 30% of the time.
Yeah, that's insane. Like it might be one of the cards where I have the biggest delta with what other people are doing in this specific cube, because
there might be one coming in 2 cards, but Lotus Cobra, I know that you like it, so you probably like it.
Yeah, I like it
in this archetype too, and especially when you will have Halana Alana, I guess that will be.
Yeah, it can attack, which makes it a good mana dork for sure.
Primal Might, that's the other card. I think that this one will wheel probably 50% of the time.
Yeah, it probably shouldn't.
And then it's like as if in a row, like Lotus Cobra, Paradise Druid, Incubation Druid.
Yeah, in this archetype, I think Incubation Druid is the best of the bunch for obvious reasons, but Lotus Cobra is not far behind, and like all of them are fine, and I'll be happy to play.
Yeah, obviously, and for the listeners, if you will put a counter on Incubation Druid in any other way, which you have several methods of doing, it will still give 3 mana, so you can very quickly ramp into huge numbers with the Incubation Druid by putting this counter from Dromoka's command onto it. Defiler of Vigor, so that's your second best 5-drop.
Yeah, maybe not second best. Like I guess it's lower on the list, and there are things I'm forgetting right now, but it's definitely like a good 5-drop to play.
It's also reasonably open. I mean, you can get it easier than you can get Paradise Druid.
Yeah, okay.
Elspeth Resplendent. That's another 5-drop.
Oh. Maybe I'm underrating Elspeth. Obviously, it puts counters, so
You can give it
the...
double first strike, which is not the same as.
That's nice. No, I think Elspeth is quite good. With the problem is that if your 5-mana play is a Planeswalker and you're behind on board, it doesn't necessarily help you stabilize. And Vivian has the same problem. And since the cube is very board centric, I like expensive spells that help me catch up when I'm behind, if
I
possible.
mean, the -3 will sort of stabilize you for a turn. I guess the shield counter should be enough.
Yeah, the minus can help, but you're not always sure of what you're getting, so it's always a little gamble with it.
I was scrolling to check one card, and of course I lost myself there. Sanctuary Warden. Now that's the top end if I see one.
Yeah, that's
Is it too expensive in this, or?
Yeah, it depends on the exact build. Like you will have some green-white versions that have a lot of ramp, like a lot of green 2-drops that we mentioned. And in these decks, I'm happy to play Sanctuary Warden. And you will have others that are going to be more white-based.
And also, I mean, like, how relevant is the fact that you can remove those counters from stuff and just basically swamp the board, draw so many cards like later in the game? That can take over the game very quickly if you're on a parity.
Yeah, I don't think it is that relevant because the first counter you remove is almost always going to be one of the 2 shield counters. And then the second becomes relevant when you are able to attack with it, and at that point you're already in good shape. But I would say it's a nice bonus.
Would you? I mean, wouldn't you remove like +1/+1 counter from something menial instead that you might have had from earlier plays?
I think I would only do that if I'm playing against a deck that I know has no way to remove a Warden through the shield counters. But there are a bunch of removal spells that do it anyway. Like if I'm playing against Gruul, yeah, I might value the shield counters more, for example.
Argoth?
The land,
Yeah, that's the one that makes bears and mills you and can make Titania big.
I don't think I will play this card very often in my decks. Like I've been unimpressed with even with the combination of both, and like I don't want to play Titania in green-white counters, and I don't want to play Argoth without Titania. So yeah.
Do you want to play Sarah Paragon then?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
I think that the fact that your Conclave Mentor is a 2-mana creature is helping there, I guess.
Yeah, there are a bunch of value 2 and 3 mana creatures that do stuff like Spellbinder, Skyclave Apparition, stuff like that. So I think it's worse, like quite a bit worse than Restoration Angel and Wandering Emperor, but I will play it.
Okay, Fight Rigging.
Very good card. Yeah, very
Okay.
very good card.
Yeah, because this one is always tricky to know because on one hand it looks good, but on the other hand it doesn't impact the board when it enters the battlefield. So
yeah, but it's not that hard to get to 7 power. Your opponent has to like really chain removal spells to prevent you from getting there. And once you get the free spell, the card is absurd. Yeah.
Just play it when you have Gargaroth in play. Which brings us to the next card, Gargaroth.
I probably want to include in green maybe the very best counter decks with a lot of synergies won't play it, but like almost all green decks will.
The ones that plan to finish the game before 5 mana hits the table.
Yeah, or if you have like sometimes your decks are so synergistic that you don't have space for cards that don't put counters or do stuff with counters, but like it's very rare, I think.
Okay, Blade Splicer, that's always a weird include. I mean, I know it's a rate is pretty good, but
it's I'm not excited to play her unless I have the Blink sub theme with Restoration Angel and stuff.
Steel Seraph.
Probably a little underpowered, I would say. Yeah, fringe playable for that deck. Maybe I'm undervaluing it.
You want to be maybe if you're more white, then you can reliably cast the 3 mana version. Maybe.
Oh, for sure, you want to be able to play it for 3. Otherwise, I wouldn't really consider it. But yeah.
Okay, Vivian Reed.
Okay, Vivian Reed, I think, is better than Elspeth overall, but worse in this archetype than the creatures that can attack or stabilize. So I would play Gargaroth over Vivian Reed in green white. I would play Defiler most of the time over Vivian Reed. But I mean, I'm still going to play Vivian Reed a lot of the time because it's a very good and very flexible card. It can help you deal with problems you wouldn't deal with otherwise.
It still doesn't deal with Immerstream Predator.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, this one I have to probably read because it's an alchemy card, but Jukai Liberator, not to you, but to the people that might listen to later. It's a 3-mana 3/3 with ninjutsu for 1 and a green. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose land or non-land and seek a permanent card of the chosen kind.
So this is a card that is too optimistic for my tastes. It's only good when you manage to
When you're ahead.
when you're ahead, when you have creatures that that sneak.
Also,
That,
maybe you don't
yeah,
want to return to your hand the cards that you put like 5 counters on.
sure. Like I think one of the best synergies is with the pup, the 1/2 pup, but we are talking about 2 fringe cards, so it's not going to happen very often.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going there. Okay, so rethink. Lauren.
Loran is better than Reclamation Sage, but still, yeah, maybe it has enough to be played more than half the time in this archetype. I don't really know how much how good the symmetry draw is. I guess it's something like it can help you push the last points of damage.
Yeah, exactly. That's how do you decide that the board state is beneficial for you to use the symmetry draw?
I think I would need. So I won't do it. I won't do it if I'm ahead, or yeah. I will basically never do it if I'm ahead in the game. I can do it at parity. Like at parity, I guess it's fine because you can use the card better than your opponent most of the time because you do it during your turn or at the end of their turn. And when you're behind, it also depends on the matchup, like how good the how good the average card in their deck is compared to how good yours is. Most of the time when you play green white, your average card is actually going to be quite good because you have synergy in your deck, and your creatures are good on their own. Also, like if your creatures are like Tireless Tracker, Restoration Angel, Spellbinder, like your cards have weight, even the curve creatures. So I think I'm ready to use it at parity against most decks, and maybe sometimes if I'm a little ahead. And if you're
Okay.
behind, obviously, like you can use it to
Yeah,
find
you have to
action.
because you're desperate.
Yeah.
Werewolf pack leader.
Excellent card, but you need a lot of green sources. Ideally, you have our elves or Elvish Mystic to help you out. But yeah, it's just a great card when you can put counters on it.
So if you have both elves, would you play it in the white green?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would play it if I have a little more green than white in my deck, I think. So let's say if my mana base is like 10, 8, something like that in sources, in terms of mana sources, I would play Pack Leader.
Okay. You told me that there is no knights, but there is. There is Benalish Knight Counselor. That's again an alchemy card. So read it. It's a 1-mana 2/1 with enlist, and whenever it enlists, you get a boon with when you cast your next creature spell. That creature enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. So it's
I
sort of
think,
like reverse of the wolf, no? In a way that it probably will die and trade with something, most likely because you enlisted it, but you also get a +1/+1 counter later.
yeah, I don't have much experience with this card because it's very new, but my first inclination is that it's a trap, or at least not a, like it doesn't want you to do good things. You want to be attacking with your creature or use them in other ways. And a 2/1 is going to trade with a lot of stuff. Like even with Enlist, your opponent will be happy to trade with a Shambling Ghast or Gutter Bones or whatever. So I don't think it's a great card.
Well, yeah, 2/1s against Shambling Gust is another kettle of fish. Restoration of Enganjo.
Not for this archetype.
Okay.
Yeah, I would avoid it. It's too the board presence is comes in too late.
Wedding announcement.
Yeah, very good. Let's say worse than Tireless Tracker. A lot worse than Adeline. Worse, like it's worse than a lot of stuff, but it will make the cut. I think a good percentage of the time still.
Okay. This is interesting for me. Clarion Spirit.
Very medium. Only in the very best decks, I guess, with the best curve.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. Like
Yeah.
in your average one, sort of aggressive but mid-rangey, it's probably not good because you want double with Gargar. But if you have some kind of like an aggro concoction that is really, really ultra aggressive.
Yeah, the problem is that I'm not a fan of the pup or the knight that we saw just before. Like there are a bunch of 1-drops I'm not happy to play. So in the end, I end up not playing the spirits.
Visionary.
Llanowar Visionary.
Yeah.
Depends on the 5-drops.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's another one that you have to consider carefully. If you play it on 3, you want to play a 5-drop next turn.
Yeah.
If you don't have good 5-drops, don't play it.
You have honorary 5-drops that you can play. Like Tireless Tracker can be a good 5-drop. So you have to be on the lookout for those. Or Serra Paragon, maybe if you have 1-drops. Like you can make it work in other ways, but you need to use the mana.
Bushwhack.
I think it's pretty bad for the format, but I don't really know. Like
I mean, it was not. It didn't even have very good win rate numbers in Brothers War, so I assume it's just not strong enough for that.
Yeah,
unless you want to go really low on lands.
I really like model cards and stability and all that stuff, but I think the card is just too bad of a rate.
If you have Halana Alena in your deck, and that's another source of red for you.
Yeah.
Adanto Vanguard.
Adanto Vanguard is a very high variance card depending on the matchup. It can be very, very bad against red-black. And since red-black is probably the best deck, that's a problem. Because you can kill it with minus effects with Yawgmoth, Shambling Ghast, etc. or Mituk Massacre. And also the 4-life is very relevant in this matchup because you can get drained to death. So I guess you don't want to main deck it if you... Like, if I'm playing the open, I would be hesitant to main deck it. But it's a fine sideboard card.
Thragtusk.
It's worse in green-white than most of the other 5-drops we talked about.
Okay, well, that's enough, because probably you want to be in the white-green when you actually have access to good cards. Turn Timber Symbiosis, too much?
I don't really know. So far, I haven't been impressed. Maybe I've cast it once, and it was fine. I guess if my deck is good, I'll be more inclined to play it to reduce the variance on drawing too many lands, and because my average creature is going to be better as well. But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe it's a mistake to play it because of red-black and how much the life loss matters. I don't know.
Okay, Kabira Takedown.
I would have said it's pretty good before this episode. Now I'm not sure.
But we're talking about a different iteration. It might be that.
I think if you have stuff like Wedding Announcement, you want to play Takedown. Like if you have several cards that can generate several bodies each, then you play Takedown for sure. If you don't, and your creatures are mostly standalone creatures, maybe it's too weak.
Leyline Binding, which will cost roughly 4 mana. Is it good enough for mana flash? Deals
Good
with
enough.
everything.
Yeah, good enough if you don't have Faithful Absence. Like if you don't have the premium removal spells, I guess you can play it, but I would
It's funny,
try
we still
to.
didn't get into the faithful absence even. That's how low it is.
It's amazing, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess slightly better when you're splashing red for the Hallan Island again.
Hmm.
Cave of the Frost Dragon.
I think I like this one because usually, like you're an aggressive deck, you want to push the final damage. You don't always have that many flyers in green white, so sometimes your aggression is blunted on the ground and you have nowhere to go. So I think I'm going to play cave most of the time. Yeah.
That's actually why I liked something else that was giving flying. What was that? Oh, I forgot already. Ulenwald Oddity.
Um, Pretty good. Yeah. Um, Worse than Sarah Paragon to make like
And Sarah Paragon in turns was worse than a couple of other cards. So it's like
yeah,
one
it's
and a half tier, 1.5 of the 4 drops.
yeah the medium to bottom tier of the 4 drops. I'm ready to play. Yeah,
But you're ready to play. That's an
I'm ready.
important distinction
I'm
because
ready
I
to
mean,
play it.
some of
Yeah.
them you will just not. Dread Green Seeker, I don't think it's the deck for it, is it?
No, it's not.
Unbreakable Formation.
Um, it's more of a
Sideboard, I
side.
guess.
Yeah, I would say more of a sideboard card against sweepers.
Oracle of Moldiah, I guess not.
No.
Soonest Intervention. Oh, make
Um,
Knight.
yeah, preferably not. It's worse than Vorinclex and Titania's Command, and you
Okay.
don't always want a 6 drop. So yeah, I wouldn't play it very often in green white.
What about Renan 7?
Overrated. Another C word, very overrated card.
Glorious Sunrise? Is it?
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's worse than Vivian and Elspeth because it doesn't produce board presence in the same way. In addition to card advantage. Yeah, I think it's
Slightly harder to deal with, though.
depends on the it depends on the deck. I guess it will be too weak most of the time, but I haven't played the card much. Maybe because people are valuing it higher than me.
It goes relatively late, but not like super
Mm.
late. Once Upon a Time.
Oh, a very underrated card, very good card. But I guess it's not surprising coming from me. But I think this card is very good.
Okay. Kyla's Command.
Um, Borderline playable, not very good.
Well, that's actually an interesting one. Lion Sash. It's like
This yeah,
that's like
it's
who's at home.
yeah, exactly. The comparison is interesting because I really like Ooze, and the stats difference is a big one.
But you
But
can hide it from removal.
yeah, that matters against sweepers. But the thing is, Ooze is usually big enough to avoid sweepers, so it doesn't matter that much. I guess it's like I'm going to play it maybe more than half the time, but I won't be thrilled about it.
Not 1 drop. Hopeful Initiate.
A very good 1 drop for this archetype, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Then
Yeah.
Cultivate not for this one, I guess. Wolf Will
No.
Haven not for this one.
Mm.
Faithful Absence we already know.
Yeah.
What do you think about Awaken the Woods? That's the 2 and an X make Forest Dryads 1/1s.
I don't think it's for this archetype either, except if you're playing Felidar Retreat in a weird build. But yeah, that's the dream.
That definitely is a dream. If you're playing Felidar Retreat, you probably also want to play this one,
Yeah.
Fabled Passage.
You want to play it like it's
I mean, again, same problem as with the tapped ones. It won't fix your
sure.
mana in the first 2 turns, so that's my
Yeah,
problem.
sure, but like I don't know many decks that are so perfect that they don't need Fabled Passage. Let's put it that way.
Oh, actually, that's an interesting one. The Rootwire Amalgam.
Mm, I don't know. I haven't played it yet. I think it's a little underpowered because you still need to invest 7 mana into it, at least, for the 6/6, and it can be chump blocked. And usually your
But
creatures,
it doesn't have trample. The thing is just like.
yeah, your creatures become big anyway. You don't necessarily
Do,
need big
do you
vanilla
think that they might have
creatures.
nerfed it basically when in development when removed the trample that was originally on the card?
Maybe, like I guess the 15/15 trample would have been too good, so they couldn't really put it.
Yeah. Oh, maybe. Sorry, my dog is complaining.
Is the list still long for green and white cards?
We have still some fringe cards, but we can do the trimming because I think we got most of the interesting things. We can go quickly and you can quickly say yes or no.
Okay,
Silverback Elder,
no,
Savior, Selfless Savior,
yes,
Esper Sentinel,
yes, yeah, big yes.
Lyra,
Not really, yeah. Bottom tier. Yeah, I
Talia.
mean, yeah, it's hard to value Lyra. It really depends on the matchup. You said Thalia?
Yeah.
Um, it really depends on the build and especially on the 3 drops you're playing. Like it's very bad with wedding announcement, with everything, with Maul of the Skyclaves. If your deck is mostly creatures, yeah, Thalia is going to be quite good, but you have to value it depending on the deck.
White March,
No.
Dauntless Bodyguard,
Yes.
Usher of the Fallen,
Medium.
Crystalline Giant.
Reluctant, yes. I hate that card, but it's I think it's fine.
Okay. Settle the Wild,
No.
Titan of Industry,
Not in this deck.
Resto Angel,
Yes.
Hangerback Walker.
Yes, big yes. Why is it so low?
Yes, we got it.
Okay.
The Boat,
The boat, yes.
the Big Boat.
Yeah,
That's
same.
fine.
Why is it so low?
Simulacrum, I guess no. Thraben Inspector,
Reluctant, no, this time. It's, yeah.
Maul of the Skyclaves.
Yeah, pretty good card. It depends on your 2 drops. If your 2 drops are mana dorks, you don't want to play it. If your 2 drops are attacking creatures, you want to play it.
If your
Mostly.
2-drop is the Werewolf Pack Leader.
Yeah, exactly.
Portable Hole.
Yes, actually.
Sideboard?
No, I think I would main deck it because I value cards that are better on the draw quite highly because of the win rate differential in a fast format, and I think
Sideboard out when you're on a play?
yeah, sideboard it out on the play against decks that don't have much that don't have many 2 drops. But I think even the slow decks sometimes you will be able to grab a mana dork or a stone, a mana rock. Sorry.
Mirrel, the Shield of Argive.
No, too weak compared to the other 4 drops.
Valorous Stance.
Yes, yeah, a very good interactive card to have in your green white deck because it
Rabble Rousing.
yeah, rubber rousing. Yeah, I guess it's pretty good. So again, the 5-drop conversation. I think it's better than Glorious Sunrise. I think it's
Worse than Gargaroth. Worse than
worse than Gargaroth.
Elspeth Vivian.
Yeah, I think at this point, like when we are in the Vivian to Defiler range, we have to look at the deck and see how many creatures we will have on average that are attacking. If you attack with, let's say, 3 creatures on average on the turn you play it, it's better than these cards. With 2 creatures, maybe it's a little below.
Okay, Heliod.
Is Heliod in the cube?
Yeah, it seems so.
Okay. Yeah, you need 3 to 4 cards that synergize well with it, like Scavenging Ooze, stuff like that. But I wouldn't play it overall.
Okay. What can we say? I mean, Seal Away you play almost always.
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
You can't use it to push damage. So I think it's a sideboard card, yeah.
4 mana Vivian.
Pretty good in the same conditions as a Werewolf Pack Leader. Pretty much the same mana constraints.
Yeah, okay,
Maybe,
you need
yeah.
3 green to
Mm,
cast it, so that's the
mm.
problem. Teleportation circle.
No,
No,
sorry,
no, you're hurting my feelings. Circuit Mender.
no.
Portal of to Pyrexia. No, that's not going to work.
I
Cameo
think
Safekeeping.
we have
Will you sort of play that kind of card in Cube? Is it powerful enough to be played in Cube?
the portal. If you're ramping really really fast, I guess it can make the cut, but I mostly see it as something to be reanimated, and I guess there is repair and recharge in the cube, so maybe something
No,
to do.
no. I
Yeah.
am Portal to Pyrexia. No, I'm talking about Cameo Safekeeping.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Tamio Safekeeping, I would say, is a sideboard card that you're going to main deck. If you have, I think the tiebreaker is how valuable your creatures are. Like if you have Luminarch Aspirants, like creatures of that caliber, Adeline, then you can main deck it because these creatures are going to win the game on their own if they stick.
Okay, another 5-drop in Tristani Discordant.
Okay, I didn't know it was in the cube. I guess there are so many 5-drops, it's unreal. I don't know. I didn't think about it enough.
Okay, now we're going to some kind of really. I mean, Legion's Landing
Yeah,
in some versions, I guess.
yeah, pretty nice, I think.
6 mana Vivian because we need more Vivians.
Yeah,
Too
no,
expensive.
it's too expensive. Not enough immediate impact.
Primal Command.
No, apart from maybe some weird stuff you could be doing, but yeah, no.
And we in the end get to Halana and Alana Partners, and I think that will be the last card.
Okay.
Is it a yes?
Helena Alina, yeah, it's a big yes. If you can splash
Is
it.
it a reason to sort of position yourself into that type of
Yeah,
deck?
I think so.
Should you prioritize more than if you draft green white, would you, in a sort of relatively empty pack, would you pick red lands basically?
If I don't have Elena yet, or if I
Yeah, if
have
you
it.
don't have Alana yet.
Oh no, I don't think I would speculate on, because it's at the end of the day it's 550 cards cube, and you can never be sure that you will get any individual cards. So I don't like speculating on them like that.
Yeah, again, Alana, even though it is a multicolor card, which usually doesn't go that particularly late. I mean, it goes okay late-ish, but not amazingly late.
Yeah, I think people recognize it's a great card.
Another card that was the top rare that is 4 or less in its limited format, so you know.
Yeah.
But okay, I think I tortured you enough. I will put it in my CV that I managed to suck out the enjoyment of Magic discussion from Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. I don't think it's very easy to do. But I'm extremely grateful that you joined, and I got way more than I bargained from that presentation. To the people that would be interested in finding you, where can they?
They can find me on Twitter at JE and on Twitch at Jirock, Jirock. I stream mostly on every Monday evening. I stream for at least 3 hours, sometimes more. And then the other streams depend on my mood, because I'm not a professional streamer. I do that. I mostly do that for fun. So when I want to stream, I go live.
I mean, I'm inviting non-professionals to my stream. That's amazing. To my very, very professional stream. I even got a microphone from Marshall.
Yeah, I feel honored.
But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really hope that we're going to at some time revisit it. Maybe look at your other iteration of the cube, because I mean, it's truly incredible what you're achieving in the cube draft. And also, as I said when we had our little chat before the stream, that Jean-Emmanuel in my head was always this extremely rare species of Magic player who can win at the top competitive level, but at the same time can retain his status as a philosopher of the game and as a thinker of the game, not only as a player of the game, which is very rare. And it happens like, couple of times a generation of players. We see something like that. And I truly appreciate that we were capable of tapping into that wisdom today. And hopefully your chances of doing well in the Arena Open are much higher after listening to that. I know that mine have drastically improved. I just need to find the willingness to actually spend enough gems to try to play it. But thank you so much. I think I still have enough energy for me. I'm going to finish the stream and try to play one more cube draft, because your enthusiasm for the format has rekindled some sort of passion that I didn't know existed in me.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
The 17 Lands team and the fake Jake Brown, who is doing my help with the releasing this as a podcast. This will be available as a podcast. So if you missed it, I'm going to put it on YouTube, and on the podcast, you can catch up with the things that you missed. And to SSQ and Mana Junkie for the music that I'm using in the podcast, and mtgazone.com for sponsoring my joyful endeavors. So thank you again, Jean-Emmanuel. And with that, I'll see you next week.